Welcome to the 233rd episode of the Video Games podcast, where we talk about any game at all, including new stuff, old stuff, and anything in between. If we are playing it, we'll be talking about it. Today, we are recording on May 19th, 2021. My name is Brad Galloway. I am the editor of GameCritics.com, and 50% of this here show. With me is the man who's back from pulling sick parkour stunts off the seven wonders of the modern world, Corey Motley.
Out of all the things to lead with, that was what you went with?
I went back and forth. I had a couple of the choices, but it felt like that was maybe the best one. Should I have picked a different one?
I mean, I think a more appropriate entrance would have been like, the guy who sits at his computer for 20 hours a day and doesn't do anything, Corey Motley.
Desk jockey supreme, Corey Motley.
I'll take that.
Corey Motley, welcome back to the show, my brother.
I'm so glad to be back. I can't even remember the last time I was on the show. It's probably been like 6 months or more, and I am so happy to be back, and I am so happy to be talking about the games that we're going to be talking about today.
As am I. Now, this is going to sound weird, but you've actually been off the show longer than you've been on the show, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of our listeners who joined in the quote-unquote Carlos era might not even know who you are. So just as a quick history lesson, Corey Motley is a former, I guess you're still a staff writer at Game Critics, even though you don't write too much these days. But also good personal friend of mine and the person who I started this podcast with way back in the day. So if you go back in the Video Games archives, go all the way back to episode 1 or even episode 0, the lost episode, it's me and Corey for like a really long time, a couple of years. And then Corey moved on to a different phase in his life. I curse you to this day. And he just pops in for guest spots here and there. So here is the next Corey Motley guest spot. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. I had no idea that I have been gone longer than I've been here. It makes me think of like in a soap opera when they just recast a person one day and then maybe 5 years later the original person comes back or something like that for that role. I feel like that. And it's wild for me to think about just how long this podcast has been going, because we did it for like 2 years together, which means that you and Carlos have now done it for 2 years plus together. And here I am guest starring again, and it feels so good to be back.
It is good to have you back, sir. You have been gone too long. We need to get you on the show more often. But I'm really glad that you were here today. And actually, just for people listening, this was kind of a lucky happenstance. We didn't really plan this ahead of time. I don't know what triggered it, but for whatever reason, you messaged me about Resident Evil Village. Or did I message you? You messaged me, right?
Yeah, I think I messaged you.
And I was just like, oh, I'm actually going to play this too. And it just so happens that Carlos is taking a sabbatical next week. He's off on a sex tour of Southeast Asia. Be safe, Carlos. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, he's gone next week. Corey's talking to me. Corey's available next week. Oh, synchronicity. This is wonderful.
Just like old times.
Just like old times. All right, excellent. Just like old times, we are not going to fill the top end of the show with a bunch of garbage. We are going to stick with the current script structure, though. So I don't know if you've been listening to the show lately, Corey, but recently Carlos and I moved in together. We share a house, and in this house, we have different lifestyles. I'm pretty neat. Carlos is pretty messy. And in order to avoid domestic squabbles, we had a big roll of duct tape, and we put a strip of duct tape down the middle of our living room. And we keep our house every week. He's got stuff on his side. I've got stuff on my side. So it's now time to keep the house, since Carlos is not here. It's keeping the house with Corey. Corey, I guess you can check up with me for a week here. Do you have anything on your house, your side of the house that needs to be cleaned up?
That needs to be cleaned up?
Any housekeeping to do? Any issues you want to bring to the table? Any grievances to air?
Well, I aired all of my grievances in our pre-show chat before we started recording, so thank you for that. I have like one small video game related topic I can touch on right now. Is this an appropriate time to do it?
This is absolutely appropriate. Please do.
I just wanted to say, this is going to be kind of a shout out, I guess, but I will talk about Mass Effect in a minute because I've been playing Mass Effect Legendary Edition, but I wanted to give a shout out to a new YouTube channel that I found. Usually I don't watch a lot of gaming stuff on YouTube because it's mostly like young, energetic, straight white dudes who are just like screaming at the camera, whatever. I'm just not really into that. There are a few channels that I watch here and there that do these really long, incredible kind of like video essays that really deep dive on certain games. But I was searching for sort of like a Mass Effect decisions guide as I was playing it the other day on YouTube so that I wouldn't miss anything weird going in. Because even though I've played Mass Effect like 3 times over, it's always nice to refresh yourself. And I found this YouTuber, and her name she goes by Mother Mantis, and Mantis has 2 S's on the end. Her name is Diana. And she is, I think, a grandmother. She's definitely a mother. I think she might be a grandmother. She's like an older white lady. She's probably in her 50s. And this is going to sound so biased and sexist on my part, and I apologize for that. But when you think of gaming YouTubers, I certainly don't think of like older, women of a certain age on YouTube. But not only is she like such a great demographic, because I feel like she even said in one of her videos that she feels like this unicorn because she didn't start really playing video games until she was, I think she said in like her late 30s or 40s or something, because she had children when she was younger and, spent a lot of time, raising them, obviously, and, kind of being the head of the household and all that. And so she got into gaming when her daughter, I think, recommended World of Warcraft to her. She said in one of her videos. And I just want to say, like, I've been watching her videos, and she is so cool. She's just like this older lady. She knows so much about Mass Effect. Pretty much, she only has maybe like 20 videos up on her channel. She's got about 2,000 subscribers so far. One of her videos, I think the video that I tuned into, the Decisions Guide, has like 35,000 views on it, which I think is pretty incredible for someone who's been, who hasn't been doing YouTube very long. But it's such a breath of fresh air to find someone like that on YouTube. And like, sometimes she has these little snippets in her videos of her like cooking like a pot roast or something. And it's so cool because she'll do like a little intro and she looks like she's making this delicious dinner. And then she'll cut to her like sitting down at her computer, and she like has like totally like a gamer bro like chair that she sits in for gaming. And she's like a PC gamer, and she like talked about upgrading her PC in one of her videos, and a bunch of her videos are about Mass Effect, and she like really deep dives on a bunch of stuff. And sometimes she drinks like whiskey while she's doing her videos. And she's just like, if just from watching one video of hers, I would have assumed that she had been making YouTube videos for years at this point, because she's really well spoken. She does an excellent job of cutting in gameplay footage of like over what she's talking about, and so you can tell she really thinks about stuff and writes everything down, and really, she's not flying by the seat of her pants. And I have a lot of respect for people who do that, because I'm always flying by the seat of my pants. So she's just very cool, and it's so nice to see that demographic like on YouTube, and her kind of gaining a little bit of traction, because like I said, most YouTubers in the gaming space are, I mean, at least I feel like, are sort of like juvenile, like white dudes, and they're just a lot to handle. But she's just very cool. She talked about how much she loves WoW and Mass Effect, and she talked about playing Dishonored in one of her videos, and I'm like dying for her to do a series on Dishonored, so I hope she does. And she just like was talking about like graphics cards and upgrading her CPU, and it's just like not what you would expect from looking at her. And I know that's kind of a terrible thing to say, but it's at the same time, it's just the most refreshing thing. So if you're interested in anything like that, I would highly recommend checking out her channel. Again, her name is Mother Mantis. She's very cool, just very well spoken, very knowledgeable about Mass Effect. She's got a bunch of videos about Mass Effect. Her videos are pretty short. I think they're like about 10 to 15 minutes long, so they're not a big time suck. But she's wonderful, and I cannot wait for her to keep uploading more stuff so I can watch it, because I really like her.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I haven't heard of her. I'll give her a look-see next time I'm on YouTube. It kind of reminds me of one of my friends from Twitter. Her name is Britta, and I believe she's in the UK. I think she's in England or in some part over there in Europe. And she is definitely an older lady. I mean, no disrespect to anyone, not trying to throw shade here, but she could easily be someone's grandma. And she goes on Twitter by the handle Food for Dogs, and it's food with the number 4 dogs. And the first time I came across her, like I thought someone was punking me, or like it was a joke account or something, because I mean, Food for Dogs, that's not really a typical name you'd associate with games. And then when I saw she looked like this older lady, like someone's grandma, I'm like, is this a joke? Like, what is happening? This lady is talking about like the Vita, like she's like the most hardcore Vita enthusiast, and she's like super knowledgeable about like JRPGs and strategy games. And I'm like, is this for real? Like, are you for real? What is going on? Are you a kid and this is a picture of grandma? And like, nope. She went on to start her own YouTube channel. I believe her YouTube channel, is also the same, called Food for Dogs. I need to check on that. But she's great. She's awesome. Like, I love talking to her. She just started a new newsletter. And it's like the most well-written, comprehensive newsletter. Like, it's professionally done. And I'm like, oh my God, Britta, this is like so amazing. You're like so cool. Like, you're like this awesome gaming lady who just knows her shit. And she just like is really well spoken and fun to watch. And it just is like, it's a totally different energy to watch a lady who is, again, I don't mean to be insulting, but like, of advanced age, who is not usually what we think of when we think of as like the hardest core gamer, and like seeing her just like know her shit, and she knows what she's talking about, and she's like all up on the latest news, and I'm like, man, this is fucking amazing. Like, it's so cool to talk with a human who is older than me, who also likes the same things that I do, which is, I mean, growing up, that was a very like rare circumstance. Like, I barely knew any grownups at all when I was a kid who liked games. I mean, it just wasn't a thing. Like, I come from the era where you were like this like no life loser nerd if you like games. I mean, of course that's changed a bit, but I mean, to have that relationship with someone who is older, and it's pretty amazing. So it sounds like you've kind of got that same energy there.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to have to go look her up after we finish the podcast now, because she sounds wonderful. And Food for Dogs, that sounds like one of those, like, like the Can You Pet the Dog Twitter account. That's like what I think of when you say that. So knowing that that's her handle and that she's into games sounds amazing.
I love Britta. So cool. And I'll have to definitely check out what Mother Mantis is what you said?
Yes, Mother Mantis.
I was going to say Mistress Mantis, but I think that's a different account. That's a different... we're going to look that up after the show.
That's her OnlyFans account, actually.
Everybody's got OnlyFans these days, dude. All right, so that is yours. Anything else? Any other tidbits on the side of your house that need to be cleaned up?
I don't think so. I was trying to brainstorm about some little things I could talk about earlier, but I mean, that's about it. Other than, I mean, I don't know. I don't think we want to get all hard newsy, but there's been a lot of shit going on with, IGN and the Palestine and Israel conflict and their statement on it. And I don't really think we need to deep dive in that, but that whole situation is really fucked up from IGN's corporate, like entity that owns the company, like basically overruling them editorially. I've been following that pretty closely on Twitter, and it seems like a fucking mess, but it's weird to think about, like, when I was in college, IGN was always kind of like the biggest gaming site, but at the same time, I never associated it with like very sophisticated editorial work. It was kind of like lowest common denominator video games writing, in my opinion. And it seems like from the, I mean, it's been like 10 years since I've really checked in with IGN, but it really seems like they've come a long way, and it's nice. I still follow a handful of editors for, that work for IGN, and former editors and writers on Twitter, and just seeing them really get serious about like editorial ownership and journalism has been really refreshing, because I would expect that kind of behavior from, maybe a site like, I don't know, like Polygon or something that's like a little more sophisticated. But seeing that from IGN and seeing the community surround them and support them has been really refreshing. And it's been, I mean, who knows what's going to happen at this point, but there's always talks about news sites like unionizing and about editorial ownership. And this is such a serious topic happening right now. And seeing kind of the whole game space kind of rally around them has been really refreshing, and gives me a lot of hope for, sites that maybe I didn't think highly of in the past that now I have, a new appreciation for.
It's interesting you bring that up for a number of reasons. I mean, number one, the So Videogames podcast, I think, is totally in support of Palestine and what the Palestinians are going through right now. We don't often swing political as just a matter of course, but I think that's definitely something worth talking about. The stuff that's going on over there is a horror show, and if there's anything that we can do to support those people, I think we should. But along with that, I think it's also kind of the changing face of the modern world. I mean, I can remember a time way back in the day when I would jump on Twitter, and the worst thing I would talk about is like whatever fucking stupid game was bothering me that day, or some stupid opinion that somebody dropped, and that would be like the thing of the day, right? I mean, the time when I could jump on Twitter and all I was worried about was game shit is like, it feels like a lifetime ago. Like, it's all about the Republicans, it's about the Middle East, it's about COVID, it's about whatever, Black Lives Matter, it's about trans rights. I mean, it's about so many things that are important and vital and things that we need to support. And we just don't live in a world where you can ignore that stuff anymore. Not if you have a conscience, and not if you want to be a good person. And I miss that time when all I had to think about was games, but at the same time, I am never going to close my eyes to those things, and I don't think that anybody should or can. And we can't really relax until we, have justice for people that deserve justice, have equal rights for people who deserve those rights, have safety and security for people who need it. And it's just a sign of the times that like so much shit is going down. We are living in such quote unquote interesting times right now that so much chaos and terror and badness, like in every country all around the world. Like you just can't look at games and pretend like the rest of the world isn't happening. So I know that, and we've gotten comments on this show, specifically to the show, saying, hey, we listen to your show because it's like our port in storm, right? Like whenever the world is getting too much, we listen to your show because it gives us like a break, right? Like we serve like, entertainment up, we give news up, we give jokes, we talk about games. And if somebody needs like an hour or two to just like disconnect from whatever horror they're facing in real life, like we're happy to do that. But at the same time, like we also can't pretend like that's not going on. So I'm really glad you brought that up. God, and I do also support all of the people who got shit on by the owners, like having their editorial power stripped away. Like, I think they even took down that post. And for those that don't know, it was the editors of that site put up a post supporting what's going on in Palestine. They also had a lot of links for like how you could give aid, like financial aid and other things. And I think it was like midnight that night that the owners of the site like took it down without letting the editorial team know. Super cowardly, super dastardly, like just really, really awful. And they, push back in response, and other sites around the internet have posted some of that same resources and same information in response and solidarity. So, man, crazy times right now. But yeah, we do support the Palestinians, and we do support people's editorial integrity to be able to stand up and talk about things like this. I mean, that's what free speech is all about, right? It's not about wanting to take off your mask whenever you feel like you don't want to wear a mask. It's not really about wearing a gun wherever you want to wear a gun. I mean, if you want to talk about what's an important right, I mean, being able to speak your mind without the government cracking down or without somebody else squashing that, especially when people are in need. I mean, that's what it's really all about as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I mean, I guess we did go off on a bit of a tangent, but there's something to be said for using this because I do the same thing with YouTube videos. When I need to check out, I will watch like, some 20-year-old girl do her makeup on YouTube, and that's like relaxing for me. And I understand why people would come to the show and want to be, and maybe wouldn't want to hear about this stuff, but at the same time, that shows, I mean, you at least have to like acknowledge the kind of privilege you have to be able to, just ignore that kind of stuff. But it is hard to try to stay involved with everything all the time, because I often sit at my computer and scroll through Twitter, and it seems like, for the past, like 5 years, to this day, it's like there's so many humanitarian crises going on across the world, and obviously within the United States at once, that it just feels so like incomprehensible and so difficult. It's like, what the fuck do you even do? Like, it's hard. I just feel numb a lot of the time, but I think it's at least worth bringing up, even if it feels like as an individual person you can't do a whole lot to really solve anything. But at least talking about it and promoting it from a platform that we have is something important that we can do.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. I mean, and to your point, I mean, the ability to simply take a break and listen to a podcast, or even for us to be able to make a podcast, is definitely a privilege, man. There's a lot of people out there who don't even have a fucking place to live, or they're scared of getting bombs dropped on their head, or they don't have, electricity or running water. So how the world could they ever make a podcast? I mean, I definitely want to recognize that we do have privilege, and that we do have, a good situation in many ways. Even though it's not perfect here in America, we are definitely, better off than a lot of people who are not so fortunate around the world. So I think it's worth recognizing that. So yeah, I mean, it sucks because we are suffering from global issues, and yet we are individuals, and our power to affect change is fairly limited. I mean, it's like, it's frustrating to recognize these things, to see these things, and not be able to do really anything about it. It's just, we are in some dark times right now on multiple levels. So, I mean, definitely recognize that. I definitely recognize the feeling of stress, of fear, of being surrounded by this stuff all day long. I mean, they call it doom scrolling for a reason, right? Like, you go jump on Twitter. I mean, unless you're blocking and curating very heavily, you're going to be exposed to stuff that you probably are finding pretty worrisome, or something that is disturbing to you. So I get it for sure. But we are not going to solve those issues today, although I do agree with you. I do think it is worth bringing them up, and we do, we do have to talk about it once in a while. We can't live in a bubble the entire time. So thank you for bringing that up, Corey Motley. And if anybody listening would like to talk about that or have some comments for the show, we will definitely be open to that. Always looking forward to your emails for sure. Just to wrap up the housekeeping section here, only one thing on my agenda. I'm going to just veer it back to games, and we're going to talk about games for the rest of the show. So if there's anybody who comes to the show for your escape, I apologize. We will be getting back to the entertainment in just a minute here. I want to just talk really quickly about The Longing. It is a game that I am still playing, actually, but I talked about it on the show maybe 2 episodes ago. Are you familiar with The Longing, Corey?
In true me fashion, you're bringing up a game that I've never even heard of, so please enlighten me.
Excellent. I would expect no less. Perfect.
Hold on, can I guess what it is? Is it like a freaking indie 2D pixel-based roguelite or something? Is that what it is? Or have you switched genres on me, Brad?
No, that is still my genre for sure. You're only half right on this one. The Longing is an indie game. I believe it's from Germany. I may be mistaken. Started out as a short story and it got turned into a game. Basically, for those who don't recall, you play a troll who lives underground in a series of caves, and his job is to wake up the king of the underworld in 400 days. The king is tired, he needs to regain his energy, and he's like, okay, I'm going to take a nap for 400 days. Please wake me up at the end of 400 days and go. And the king just is sleeping, and then you are left to your own devices in the underworld for 400 days. This is real-time days. This is actual, literal 400 days, so it's longer than a year. And what you do as this little troll guy is you just find ways to kill time. You are just waiting to wake up your master. So you walk around in the halls and you pick up rocks and you put your toes in the water and you kind of just spin your wheels and try to figure out what you can do for 400 days in real time. It is a very fascinating, really, really interesting game on multiple levels, from a design perspective, from a philosophical perspective. It's really, really interesting. It is, however, extremely boring to play.
It sounds boring to play.
It is really boring to play. It's also fascinating, but it's boring. But the problem that I had with The Longing before was your character walks probably the slowest walking speed I've ever seen in any video game in my entire life. It is the slowest walking speed. And a lot of times he's just walking from point A to point B, or sometimes he'll have to do a thing where he's mining a crystal, and it's oh, this crystal is really tough. It's probably going to take me 3 days to get through this crystal. And he's not fucking around. It's literally 3 days, right? So in the past, and I think they may have patched this in. I don't think this was there from the beginning. I was frustrated because I wanted to explore this game, but I didn't want to watch the paint dry. You know what I mean? It was exciting as watching grass grow. So I think one of the recent patches, and I could be mistaken, if anybody knows I'm wrong, please let me know. But I think one of the most recent patches changed it so that when you tell your character to go do something, walk to this location, mine this crystal, do whatever, you can actually shut the game down completely all the way, play something else, and when you come back to the game, he will have done the thing that you wanted him to do. So, for example, I was mining a crystal. I didn't want to watch it for 3 days. I'm mine this crystal, and I'll come back. And he's okay, shut the game off. I go play Monster Hunter for 3 days, come back, and the crystal's mined. I don't think that's how it worked before, and that was one of my complaints when we talked about it on the show originally. It is there now, and that was how the PC version functioned. It makes a lot more sense when you can do it that way, because if you only need to check in for 5 minutes and say, oh, thank you for this crystal, now walk to the other end of the cavern and I'll check back with you in 2 days, and you don't have to watch him, that makes more sense, right? Because then it's little snapshots over the course of a year, rather than you, the player, actually having to put in a year's worth of time, which is not appealing. So heads up to anybody who was curious about this. If you thought it sounded kind of neat, but you didn't want to watch the paint dry, jump into it now. Tell the little guy to do what he wants to do. You can leave, come back, and it's done when you come back. It totally makes the game a much different experience. I definitely recommend it now, and I am still going through this game in real time. I will be finished with this game sometime, I believe, in 2023.
Oh my God. Does that mean you can start the game and then just not play it for a year and a half and then come back to it and finish it?
Yes, that is legitimately one of the endings. You can simply turn on the game, do nothing, come back in 400 days and end the game. That is 100% you can do that.
That's actually kind of incredible.
It is the most bizarre experience. I don't know how to even review it. I don't know even how to handle it. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, obviously stuff happens. Things happen over time. Things get revealed. Things pop up. It's not just about watching the paint dry. There are things that you can do, but it's all very slow. It requires a lot of patience. But this little tweak will help make this game much more playable, and I'm actually very excited about checking in like for 5 minutes at the end of my days. I actually kind of look forward to it now. So there we go. That is my update for the logging, and that is all we have in keeping the house. Corey's house sitting on Carlos's side. His side is now clean. My house is clean. We are ready to move on to the main section of the show. Are you ready, sir?
I have never been readier.
I love to hear it. Loving that energy. We're going to keep it rolling. All right, here at the top of show 233, going to give a quick shout out, if you don't mind me starting off here, about a game called Talisman. This is a real life board game that apparently is pretty popular. I think it's probably maybe more popular in Europe than it is America. Have you ever heard of or played Talisman, Corey, the board game?
I have not, but I'm also not a board game aficionado by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I think I like buying board games because I like getting the pieces and I like all the colorful boards and the miniatures. Like it's always so cool and neat, and I love unpacking them and looking at all the stuff you get. But man, like playing them is just like I never play them, dude. I never play them. It takes too much time. It's too hard to learn the rules if you don't have somebody who already knows the rules. They usually take like several hours, and I've got a young kid. My kid is not that young, but still he's 12 now. So it's like his patience is not infinite, and I got a bunch of board games stacked up that I never play, and I've kind of given up on playing them, but I do still have interest. And this is a video game adaptation of Talisman, which I have heard, but I've never played in real life. So what is it? I don't know. I can't say. I can't explain it. But basically, the gist is, it is an adaptation of a board game in the most literal sense. And what I mean by that is, you start playing the game, and what you see on your screen is like a virtual picture of what the actual board looks like, as if you were looking at it on a table. So it's not like you're not in the world. The characters are not animated. You are like, it is like looking at a board game on your TV is what it looks like, which to me is the absolute most boring way to ever do an adaptation. I don't know why you would do that. You have cards, you have dice. The dice actually, well, not actually, but they virtually roll. You have pieces you move around the board, but it looks just like you're playing a board game. So for me, who struggles to get into board games, having it play like this is not the greatest, because there are some tutorials. They kind of explain a little bit, but not nearly as much as you would get from a friend if you invited them over for, beer and pizza and a Friday night game night or something. It's I don't have anybody to play with, so I'm playing by myself. You can play solo, which is great. And you can look at the cards and read those if you want to, but I'm kind of hazy on the whole mechanics, and I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be doing. The tutorial could be a little bit better. And I feel like I really like the idea of board games being translated into video games, but I need them to like really take advantage of the medium, right? Like, give me some animation, do some zooming camera shots, like, jazz it up a little bit, give me some special effects, give me some extra tutorial help if I need it. I really want them to really leverage being a video game and to keep the essence of the board game. For me, this is it's too bare bones. Like, I bet if I knew this game in real life, I would be like, oh yeah, this is fun, because I can play it with friends online, or I can just play it when I want to play it by myself. That's cool, but like, as someone who doesn't know this game, it kind of is like somebody handing me the box of the board game and being like, okay, go to it. And I'm like, well, okay, I struggle to do that already, and this is not really helping me that much. So it's not a criticism, really. I mean, it is exactly what it says it is. It is the electronic version of Talisman. And if I knew Talisman, that'd be pretty cool. But as someone who needs a little bit more than that, I find it to be kind of lacking. And I wish that they had jazzed it up, right? Like action, explosions, or, a little bit more automation in some of the rules or something. So I kind of struggle with it. I think if you like Talisman out there, you might want to check into it. As for me, this is not the kind of adaptation I like, and I probably will not put too much more time into it. Corey, have I sold you on this game?
You have not, but the only way, I mean, I'm sure, like you said, for people that are familiar with the game, it's probably like cool to kind of have it in a virtual world. But
yes,
I think for me, like if I were into this, excuse me, this sounds like the kind of thing that would be cool if it were like a VR version and you could like sit and like your VR friends. Like, you could
see, now there's an idea. Yeah, that's an idea.
Like you could pretend that you're like sitting around the table, and you could like use the controller, you know, to reach out and like move the pieces or whatever to roll the dice. Like that would sound like a fun way to kind of. And I mean, I guess I don't know if the game has like online multiplayer or whatever as it is, so maybe you can kind of do that. But I feel like this could be one of those cool like futuristic like VR things where, especially in, you know, the times we're living in now where, you know, we're in a pandemic and it's kind of frowned upon to have like gatherings or parties or whatever, like a cool way to kind of sit down in a virtual space and play a game like this. But as is, with the way that you're describing it, it does not really sound like my bag. But I'm also not a board game person, so it's kind of lost on me from the get. But yeah, like I imagine some sort of like VR adaptation of this being very cool.
That is actually a cool idea. I'm not a fan of VR. I don't really find VR to be very appealing. But actually what you described actually does sound pretty cool, because there are a number of board games that I would like to play, but I don't have a group. Like so me and my wife, and we like to play board games, but a lot of board games are like 4 or 5 people, or you need at least, you know, more than 2. And I have lots of friends like in Europe or like, you know, other parts of America where maybe we would get together virtually. And if we could like strap on a helmet and see each other, you know, kind of sitting across the table from each other and our various avatars or whatever, looking at a board, that's kind of a baller idea. I kind of like that.
Well, you know me, I'm here to provide the good ideas and innovation for the show, because I know you're not going to do any of that, Brad.
No, that is for damn sure. So if there are any developers out there listening, have that idea for free. Just send me a code when you get that up and running, and we will definitely give that a shot. All right, cool. That is Talisman, the video game edition. I believe it's on every platform. I think it's on PS5, PS4, Xbox, definitely PC. So if you like Talisman, I bet you're going to think it's pretty cool. All right, Corey, over to you, sir. You've been playing a little game that I like to call Mass Effect. Also, other people like to call it that too. It's what it's called. I love this game. It's one of my favorite games of all time, but I do not have the time or bandwidth to replay it right now. But my wife has never played Mass Effect, so I bought her a copy. She's playing through it for the first time ever, and me watching her play it over her shoulder is a treat. I'm loving that so much, but that's all I'm going to say right now. Corey, you have played Mass Effect. You are playing the Ultimate Edition? What is Mass Effect, the Legendary Edition?
Yes.
All right, where are you playing it, and tell us all about it, sir?
I picked this up at good old Target. We've been really spoiled with video games lately. Like we're talking about Resident Evil later, but Resident Evil Village came out, and then literally 1 week later, Mass Effect Legendary Edition came out, which is 3 games in one, plus all the DLC and all that stuff. And I'm a big Mass Effect fan as well. The interesting thing about Mass Effect is whenever it originally came out in 2007, I was in college. And it came out on the Xbox 360. I had only had my 360 for maybe like 2 years when it came out. And all the promotional materials for it, for some reason, I just did not think I was going to like it at all. I thought, it's weird RPG. It's not really my bag. I don't know if I was in a major like first person shooting like bro time in my life or whatever, but I did not think I was going to like it. And I remember renting it. I think I rented it at Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster?
We hopped in the time machine for a minute there.
Yeah, it was either Blockbuster or I might have had GameFly at that time. I can't remember, but I got it some way or another, or maybe I bought it and it was like really, really cheap. I don't remember, but I got my hands on it somehow and just absolutely fell in love with it. I was not expecting to like it at all. I didn't really know about BioWare before then. I wasn't familiar with like Dragon Age, or I'd never played like Knights of the Old Republic. I know everybody loves that game, but I'm not really a Star Wars guy, so I just didn't think I was going to like it, and I ended up just absolutely falling head over heels for it. And I played it in college, and then obviously I played Mass Effect 2 as soon as it came out. I played Mass Effect 3 as soon as it came out, and I have since... I believe I've played all 3 of them 3 times over at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. Like I played all 3 just vanilla versions. And then I think a few years later, I think it was after I graduated college, I played all 3 of them again. And then I want to say like maybe like 3 years ago, I think I used my Xbox One to play them because I already owned them, so I could just put the disc in and play it. And I think I ended up buying the rest of the DLC, because there were some little DLC bits here and there that I had never bought before, because they released so many good DLC packs. And so I ended up, I think, buying all of the DLC I could get. And I played through all 3 of them again and played through all the DLC, which that was fun because there were DLC chapters I had never played before. So it was nice, new bits here and there on all 3 of the games. And I've been very, very excited for Legendary Edition. And I bought it at Target when it came out last week. I bought it on PlayStation 4. I'm playing it on a PS4 Pro. I'm playing it on a 4K TV. Thought about buying it on PC because I have since... maybe much to your chagrin, Brad, I've kind of become a little bit of like a PC gaming. I wouldn't say a snob because I'm definitely not, but I've definitely been playing PC games a lot more lately. But I decided, to get it on the good old console experience so I can sit in front of my big old TV and play it. At this point, I think I'm like 13 or 14 hours into Mass Effect 1. I have not dipped into 2 or 3 yet because I'm obviously going to play them all, one after another, import my saves and everything into the next game. And just to be clear for everybody listening, I think all the Mass Effect games are all great. However, the second one is my favorite, closely followed by the third. And then the first one is actually my least favorite. And I don't, I know the first one is one of your favorite games of all time, but for me, and I feel like maybe this is a consensus in the gaming community, is when the first one came out, it was definitely clunkier. It was definitely leaned more RPG in a little bit more of an archaic way. And so it just wasn't, to me, quite as finely tuned as 2 and 3. And by the time 3 rolled around, it was like a full on third person shooter, pretty much, cover shooter from the get go. And I feel like the combat intensity of 3 is really just unmatched in the rest of the series. But 1 is my least favorite. But that being said, I'm still playing the hell out of it. I'm 14 hours in or so, and it's one of those games, and I've talked about this way back on the podcast before, it has the same effect on me that something say a Fallout game does, or maybe Dishonored or something, where because it's, kind of an open world game, the story, I will brief you lightly here for anybody who maybe doesn't know about Mass Effect. I would certainly hope you'd know about Mass Effect if you're listening to the show, but you play as Commander Shepard. You can be a male Shepard or a female Shepard. You can do the whole character customization thing, and you're basically on a quest. There's an alien race, this cybernetic race called the Reapers, that are believed to have been extinct, but there's a threat that they're coming back. And basically it's all of the galaxy is at risk and you have to save it. And it's a huge space opera. It's basically to me, it's kind of like Star Trek, the game, in a way, because you have all of these alien races and they all have their own different quirks and their different attitudes. I would argue that much like Star Trek, I feel like a lot of the alien races in Mass Effect, they definitely all skew a little too human looking for my taste.
Agreed.
I wish that they were a little more interesting, because you have some really interesting races like the Hanar or the Elcor in the game. And for example, the Hanar are these weird floating jellyfish things with these really long tentacles. They're so interesting, but you only get to talk to a few of them in the game. You don't get one on your party. You don't, I would love to see a Hanar in combat, as a matter of fact. I don't know if it would have a gun on each of its tentacles or something like that. That just sounds so amazing to me. But there's all these alien races, so a lot of the game is about cover shooting. You have different classes you can pick from. The first time I played it, because I was a dumb gamer nerd, I played it as a soldier, which is just the boring ass white bread third person shooter person class. But after playing through, when I came back to it the second time around, I started playing as the adept version, which is kind of half shooting, half biotics, because I came to understand that the biotic powers are really, really fun, and I love using them. And I feel like the biotic powers are really underused, and they don't have a lot of punch in the first game, but in the second and third, they get a lot better. There's also a tech-focused class that can hack and deliver a combat drone, and there's a sniper class and stuff, but I've only ever done soldier and adept because those are the ones that appeal to me the most. But I totally got off track, but I was saying, with kind of a Fallout thing, it happens in this game where every single time I turn it on, I keep having that phenomenon where I'm oh, just one more mission, and I'll put it down. I'll save it and I'll stop it, and then I'll do the mission, and I'll be like, well, now that the mission's done, I have to go back to the Normandy, and that's the ship you're on. So like I go back to the Normandy, and then I'm like, well, while I'm here, like let me just check the galaxy map and see. And there's another mission, and I'm like, okay, one more, that's that. And then I drop down on a planet, and I take the Mako around and drive around, and I'm like, all right, let's explore this planet. And then I do like whatever missions on that planet, and then I'm like, okay, all right, I'll stop. When I get back to the Normandy, I'll stop. And then that goes on for about 4 hours, where I keep thinking that the next mission's going to be the last one. And even though
then it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, dude.
Yeah, literally, like I've been up until like 3 in the morning playing it pretty much every night this week over the weekend. And it just has that beautiful kind of open world, but still finely tuned flow. Because when I say open world, it's not like a GTA where you're like on one big planet, you're just like driving or flying across town. You go to a bunch of different planets, and some of them you can land on, and you can drive around on this kind of like small acreage of area, and there's like things you can mine, and there's usually some kind of like secret base or some shit that you can go into and see what's going on. And it just really sucks you in. And there's a lot of great character work. Like you have a squad of people, and you can choose 2 to go with you on any mission. You can, depending on what kind of shepherd you are, you can romance different people, and those romance options can stretch through all 3 games if you play your cards right. And it's just it's such a good game. But the Legendary Edition, I feel like I've been delivering such a huge preface on this, and I haven't even talked about the Legendary Edition yet. But I mean, long story short, the Legendary Edition is like everything I wanted it to be. It looks better. I was watching a handful of behind the scenes videos on like YouTube and stuff about some of the stuff that BioWare had done. And they actually, I mean, I wouldn't call this, it's definitely not like a remake, because all of the base mechanics are still there, but instead of just up-resing the textures and putting it back out, they've done a lot of really good tweaks under the hood where, there's a little bit of camera work that's different. The controls are a little bit different. Some of the areas, I guess, in the game, they've redesigned a little bit. Like they've removed some walls that now that they have the processing power on the new consoles, that they can render, I guess, larger areas. So I watched one, I think it was in like Novaria, this base on Novaria in the game, where there was like a room that had these walls up because on the Xbox 360 they couldn't like render the whole room, and now they've like taken those walls down and they've replaced like some lighting fixtures, and they've done a lot of like color grading in some of it, where I believe in the original version, the first mission on Eden Prime, the sky is kind of reddish and now it's more bluish, which that's definitely a taste thing. But I feel like unless you are, I mean, I played through these games 3 times and I can't even nail down like every single little thing, like visual enhancement, unless you have like just come off of playing the original version or this game like the back of your hand. I don't think you're really going to notice a bunch of the visual improvements, but they're definitely there. A lot of quality of life improvements that make the game run smoothly. However, there are still some bugs here and there. It has crashed completely on me one time, which was not fun, especially in the first game. Like I said, I haven't made it to 2 and 3, but in the first game, there's still some weird 2007 era stuff going on where like sometimes the game autosaves, but like I died at one point and I lost like 20 minutes of progress the other night because I thought for sure the game would autosave in one spot and it did not. That was really disappointing. Some of the movement is still a little sluggish. The facial animations, I mean, we're talking about 2007 level face animations here, so of course they're not going to be like Uncharted or whatever, but the face animations, right, like the textures on everybody look great, but the faces still look a little bit weird. And the first game, everybody looks kind of bug-eyed, like their eyes are open really wide and they all look weird.
Yeah, totally. I had forgotten how rough they look in that first game. It was a little bit shocking, mildly shocking.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of jarring, like because we're just so used to the way things look now. But I think the second and third games, kind of honed that in a little bit and made them look better. But I haven't gotten there yet, so we'll see. But I mean, it's playing mostly like butter. Really enjoying it. Plays well on the PS4 Pro. The only thing that I can kind of fault it at for a couple things. First of all, the game is way harder than I remember it being. Like, I don't remember it being so difficult when I played it on the Xbox 360 back in the day. And maybe it was, because I feel like difficulty is one of those things where in the moment you're frustrated, but then as soon as you beat the game, you're like, oh yeah, that was fine. Like, it wasn't that bad. But I was playing on standard. I think there's 4 difficulty modes, and standard is like the second lowest one. And I swear, like every battle that I was getting in, like gunfight, I was dying like 5 or 6 times over every single time because the gameplay is just not finessed in a way that I think is appropriate, where it like wants to be a cover shooter. The first game has like a sticky cover system, but then you have really powerful enemies that will just rush you. And so the cover kind of becomes pointless because if the enemies are rushing you from both sides, it kind of defeats the purpose of it being a cover shooter. And then your squad mates, at least to me on standard difficulty, you can command them to do certain things, but I usually just let them act on their own. They're basically useless in standard mode and they die in every battle like 4 seconds in. And I was getting really frustrated, but eventually I turned the difficulty down to casual, which is the lowest mode. And since turning it down to casual, it's been like a cakewalk, and I mean that in like the best way possible because I've played these games 3 times over. I don't need them to be hard. I don't need them to be difficult. I want to play it just for pure enjoyment and for the action, for the story. And so I was actually really shocked with, and part of it might be because how clunky, you know, some of the controls are in the first game, but it's very, very difficult. And I can think the last thing that is bothering me a little bit about it, I think it just has a lot of very dated level design where a lot of the areas in the game just seem like big for the sake of being big. Like you go to the Citadel, which is kind of like the main base where all the aliens live. It's kind of like your home base. And it takes for fucking ever to run anywhere. And all the hallways are really maze-like. Like there are some signs that point you around, but it's like really hard to get around. And the like Commander Shepard, who's supposed to be this like elite Alliance Navy like bad bitch, she can only dash in combat for like 4 seconds before she gets tired, and it just like doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But luckily there's a fast travel system on the Citadel, so that solves that a little bit. But even in some of the like main story missions, when you go into like an enemy base or something, the levels just feel too big and too maze-like for, I guess, like the sake of having more ground to play on. And I wouldn't expect them to, you know, cut all the environments down for Legendary Edition because that would be silly. But it just, a lot of the level design seems very dated and seems very awkward and confusing and a little hard to get around. But other than that, and the difficulty, which the difficulty part is solvable, I am having a blast. I'm probably going to finish the show and fire it up and play it for another 4 hours tonight until 3 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, it's definitely excellent. Highly recommend it. If you've never played it, there's never been a better time to jump in because all 3 games are in it. They all look great. They all control well. They've all been tweaked with good quality of life improvements, and all the DLC is packed in, and there's really like no better time to jump into it. So I highly recommend it despite a few little complaints.
Yeah, everything you said, ditto. I mean, this remains probably, it was my number one favorite game, if you take it as a series, my number one favorite game experience for many, many years. Not currently my favorite, but it is probably like at number 2 right now. So I really have so much love for Mass Effect. It is interesting, though, like the things that you pointed out, I was kind of observing those myself as I was watching my wife play. And she was, you know, she was playing through it for the very first time. So she's like, man, how do I get to the thing on the Citadel? I'm a little bit lost. So I'm like, yeah, you know, that's right. This level design kind of blows because like it's just a little bit confusing and it doesn't need to be. And some of the areas that she would go to fight, she's like, where am I supposed to go? I'm like, yeah, I know, it's kind of weird. It's kind of confusing. But it kind of just shows how far we've come in that time, right? Like a lot of those things were kind of getting figured out at the time. BioWare was kind of making strides and kind of forging the path that other people would follow after they had done Mass Effect. So, you know, you got to kind of give it some slack and realize like it was pretty revolutionary at the time. I mean, it made a huge splash. It was just like a big success and went on to spawn those sequels. So going back in time and seeing what they started off with is a little bit strange. I do think this is a great package. It's got basically every part of the Mass Effect experience except for the multiplayer, which I got to be honest with you. I know it has a lot of fans out there. I never really got into the multiplayer. Did you ever do the multi?
I never played it ever.
I played it a couple times and like it was okay, but I'm not big on multiplayer, so I never really spent much time. I know some people are sad it's not there, but you know, that aside, it's got all the stuff that you could ever want, the entire A to Z Mass Effect experience, which is really cool. Looks great. I mean, other than just the age of some of the stuff. I mean, they didn't do like a remake; it's just kind of remaster, which is an important distinction, as you noted. But it's great. I think it runs really well, or as well as can be expected. My wife has had some similar bugs as well, kind of like what you mentioned. She notices that the character AI is pretty bad in number 1, Like she's with Garrus and Tally, and she goes into battle, and she turns around and like Garrus and Tally are both gone, and she's like, "Why am I on my own?" And they're like back at the Mako. They're like walking face first into the Mako. They forgot to like walk around the car, and she's like, "Okay, come back. You morons, follow me. Let's walk around the car and then follow me into battle." That's happened more than a few times. So like demerits for that, but when you take it into account that it's however many years old, and this is basically a remaster, not a remake, you got to give it some slack. And that aside, storytelling is great, characters are great. Jennifer Hale's voice as Shepard, one of the all-time best vocal deliveries of any game ever. Like, I just love hearing FemShep's voice. It is, to me, the definitive Mass Effect character to play as. I could never imagine playing as Broshep. Would never want to. And I just think it's great. So if you have never played Mass Effect, and I know that there are people out there who would never have. I know there are. If you're listening to this podcast and you've never played Mass Effect, do yourself a favor, play through it. I think it's wonderful. Definitely still one of my favorite experiences of all time. Corey, sounds like you are still neck deep in this and loving it. So I think that's a thumbs up from both of us.
Absolutely, 100%. And even though I told myself when I started 1 that I would crit path 1 just to get to 2 because it's my favorite one, you can bet your ass I'm still doing every single side mission in 1. So I'm going.
You would be a monster if you didn't. How could you skip even a single side mission? I would be extremely disappointed if you did. And just for the sake of completion on this podcast, 2 is my least favorite Mass Effect. I like them all; they're all great, but 2 is my least favorite. Because number 1, they took the hardest jag into doing the cover shooting stuff. I felt like it was very jarring that they went from being kind of open and exploration to like they took away the Mako, they took away a lot of the side stuff, they took away a lot of the gear systems that I liked. Like they dropped a lot of the RPG stuff that I really liked about number 1. And I mean, perfectly honest, like while the last mission in Mass Effect 2 is like fucking amazing, the story in Mass Effect 2 sucks, and the last boss is a joke. It is a joke. You cannot tell me you can take that last boss seriously, dude. But what makes it good though, and what people like about it, and I'm guessing what you like about it, is the side stories. Like they really doubled down or even tripled down on the side stories with your characters. So like all the loyalty missions are like amazing. The characters are amazing. The time on the Normandy is amazing. Like that part is ace. Like that is super good, and that's what makes it good. But like the overall story with the collectors, this new race of aliens, and the final boss is dumb. It's just, it's my least favorite. I like them all. They're all good, but it is my least favorite.
I will agree with you that the last boss is kind of stupid. We can agree to that. But I think I like, because a lot of the stuff, because I guess Mass Effect 1, when you talk about like the gear systems, it was kind of a loot shooter at the time. Like you go into battle, you get like all these different guns, from your enemies or from crates that you find. And like at the time, I've come to appreciate loot shooters over time, but at that time and even now, like when I'm playing Mass Effect, the last thing I want to do is like be sitting around in a menu, like comparing the 50 weapons I got over the past hour.
I mean, it's overdone. I grant you, it's absolutely overdone in number 1. I just feel like they overcorrected in number 2. Like they kind of went too far and made it too light. And some of that stuff, it kind of felt like just it went too heavy down the Gears of War route, which I wanted it to be a little bit more of an RPG than that. But yeah, I grant you that number 1 is too much in some respects.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. I think them overcorrecting is kind of a popular opinion in the community, but I guess they kind of overcorrected in the ways that I wanted them to. So I guess I won on that one or something.
All right. Well, okay. That is Mass Effect. I think regardless of whose game is favorite and who likes which story or whatever, whether you like it RPG, whether you like it shootery, I think we both like it. And that's really the bottom line, the takeaway, the big thing to know. So check out Mass Effect, the Legendary Edition, and have a good time with that. All right, cool. Moving on, I'm going to give a quick word or two for a new game on the Switch called Space Commander War and Trade. This is a port from an iOS platform. It is now on the Switch. Basically, it's one of those games, and I don't even know what that genre is even called. Maybe you know what it's called, Corey, where you play a dude in space, and what you're doing is you're buying goods at a low price, and you're flying to the other star system, and you're selling your goods at a high price. I don't know what that's called. Space economy, space trading, privateering. I don't know what you mean. You got a label for that?
I have no idea what this would be called.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't either. There must be some good tag for it that I just don't know. But basically, it's one of those. There's many of them, and I think it's like a whole genre. People who love them really love them. So basically, you start off as this guy who's got a ship. You're in space. They're like, "Hey, bro, shoot some dudes." You shoot some dudes, and they're like, "All right, now it's time to make some money. Buy this copper or buy this, I don't know, plastic stuff or whatever, and then fly 3 galaxies over, sell it over there, make some money, and then come back and do it again." I mean, it's fine if you like one of those. It's not ever been my favorite genre, and I have to say that this game definitely feels like an iOS game. Like, it's real shaky on the storytelling. It handles okay because, it was designed with a touchscreen in mind, so a lot of the stuff is fairly automated, which is fine. I mean, I don't really need like a hyper tactical combat shooter. But it just really quickly devolves into kind of shuttling back and forth and buying low and selling high, and you'll do some side missions where you maybe shoot a couple space pirates, or maybe you're going to take somebody, give them a ride from point A to point B, basically. But that's kind of it. It's pretty par for the course, pretty standard. It looks nice. I mean, the graphics are pretty good. But other than that, it just didn't really hook me, and I felt like it's not exactly the kind of genre that I usually go to, so I wasn't going to dive headlong into this unless it really grabbed me, which it kind of failed to do. But this game exists. I think it's okay if you like the genre. If you want one more of these, it is definitely one more of those, and it's on the Switch.
Sounds to me like the kind of thing you play for like 10 minutes a night before going to bed to wind down with?
I mean, maybe. I mean, I think it's either that, or maybe I think what they're shooting for is people who just do one more mission and then end up playing it for like 6 hours in a row. Because, like, I know a really good one of those can do that to some people. I've had some friends who will message me at like 3 o'clock in the morning and be like, "Oh my God, I started playing this game at 12 noon and now it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, but I made $1 million. So like, I guess if it hits you the right way, you just get sucked into it doing your space Uber Eats or whatever. But yeah, not for me specifically, but I think if you like the genre, this is pretty acceptable and pretty good on the Switch if you need it on the go. So there you go. Space Commander, War and Trade. And I got to give one more mention of another game before we dive into Resident Evil here. I want to give a mention to Death Crown. Just came out recently. It's on PS5, Xbox, Switch, PC. I think it's on all the platforms. The developer describes it as a 1-bit graphics game, and I guess I kind of agree with that. Essentially, it's a real-time strategy, which is a genre that I don't play very often. I don't have a lot of experience in, but I saw the graphics for this game, and I'm like, God damn, I gotta play this because this looks fucking amazing. It's basically black and white. Very, very like detailed pixel work that kind of looks like pencil sketching. Like if you went to like back to junior high, when you were listening to like heavy metal and you were feeling like really emo and stuff, and you scribbled pictures on top of your 3-ring binder or something, like that's kind of what it looks like a little bit. But I mean that like in a good way, like totally not an insult. I think it's awesome. I think it's really cool. The graphics just looked amazing, and I took one look at this. I'm like, I don't care what this is, I need to play this because this looks fucking dope. But it's a real-time strategy, super streamlined, super simplified. No menus, no stats or anything. You just have 3 buttons. One button creates a tower that is used for defense. One button creates a mine, which generates resources. And one button creates a grave, which spawns skeletons. That's all you got. It's just those 3 things. Each one is mapped to a specific button. You start the game, and you are just like laying down mines and getting resources and putting down some crypts and like spitting out some skeletons, putting up some targets or towers to like defend yourself. Like the gameplay is super basic, but in a very positive way. There's nothing that gets in the way of it, right? It's right there. You know what you're doing. You know what the action is. There's no confusion about what's happening. You're just doing the game. But on top of that, it just looks fucking amazing. Like the graphics are so strong. The story is basically about a king who tries to steal Death's crown in order to avoid dying. Death doesn't stand for that, and so it's on, and they just like kind of go at it in a series of battlefields. It's just so fucking cool. I love the graphics. It kind of reminds me of something that would have played during like Liquid Television on MTV back in the day. Did you ever see Liquid Television?
Maybe that's before my time.
Eon Flux, maybe?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so the show that hosted Eon Flux, and I'm sure there are people listening going, what the fuck is Brad talking about? I don't know. This old dude is like doing archaeology on the podcast right now. Look up Liquid Television. It was a show that was on MTV, pretty edgy animation back in the day, and they were host to a show called Eon Flux, which was also like super popular when it came out, about a super special female secret agent who got killed at the end of every episode. It was pretty mind-bending and nuts. But like the reason I bring up those influences is because this game kind of gives me those same vibes of like really edgy, kind of dark, like nihilistic even a little bit, and just like not super friendly in a way, but like in a good way where like it's just really like it's doing its own thing and it's all about skeletons and death. And I kind of imagine like a heavy metal soundtrack playing in the background, even though there's not. But I just love the vibe of it. Like it's just really working for me, like aesthetically. The gameplay is super streamlined. I think it looks dope. And I gotta say, this might shock you a little bit, Corey, but I finished the game. It's a pretty short play. I mean, you can probably get through all the levels in about, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours, something like that. Finished the game. What did I do after I finished the game? I immediately restarted and finished the game again.
Oh my
God.
God.
Back-to-back plays. I never do that, dude. Have you ever?
That.
I literally never do that. I never do that. And I just had such a great time playing this game. Like, I just thought it was so fun to play, and the visuals were so strong, and I just really liked the vibe, and I just was like, man, I rolled credits, but I just want to play this again, and I totally fucking played it again. I never do that, and I think this game is great. I love Death Crown. I just think it's so cool and so neat and so unique, and I'm really glad that I spent time with it.
Well, that sounds good. The only thing, I don't really have much of a response to this other than I'm shocked that you started playing it again, but the only thing whenever you were talking about that game that really threw me for a loop was when you were like, and the last button raises skeletons. I was not expecting that.
You got to have your soldiers, and if you're playing as Death, I mean, that's what you got. You got skeletons, I suppose. So anyway, I love Death Crown. I think it's super great. I think it's out for like $15, maybe it's $12. My one word of warning is don't play it on the Switch because these graphics are meant to be on a bigger screen. It does not translate well to the Switch. Like you'll be able to play it, but you're not going to have the optimal experience. Don't do it on a small screen. Play it on like your TVs or get it on the Xbox or the PS5 or PC, whatever. Don't do it on Switch. Other than that, I love it. I give it a huge thumbs up. That is Death Crown, available now. Okay, that's all the stuff we had to get through. Now we are on to the main event, and the reason you texted me and got on the show in the first place, Resident Evil Village. And it feels weird to me to not say Resident Evil 8, although people do call it that. But they play that little game in the font where the V-I-L, or is it, or no, it's I-L-L. No, wait. Roman numerals, my enemy. It's V-I-L-L is a different color than the rest. And if you look at the color, then it's 8 in Roman numerals. God, I'm such an idiot. People know that I don't know Roman numerals now. I'm ashamed. So Resident Evil 8, also known as Resident Evil Village. Corey, I know that you were probably going to play this. You like the horror games a lot more than I do. I'm not surprised that you played this. I am surprised that I play this because I don't do horror games. I don't like being scared. I don't enjoy those kind of things. I did not play Resident Evil 7. And I don't really do anything that's spooky. But the FOMO on this one was real strong. I mean, number one, I'm a sucker for big girls. I do love a big girl. And it's got the biggest girl of them all in this game. And I'm like, well, how can I say no to that? That's hard for me to say no to. I am on record as liking big girls. Other than that, I mean, everybody in the world was talking about it and everybody seemed to be having a really good time. And I just started feeling like really lonely and sad. And I'm like, man, everybody's playing this game except for me. And I kind of don't think I would like it, but maybe I should try it. And I caved against my better judgment. I didn't think I should, but I did. And I got to say, I ended up having a pretty great time with it. So I am very excited to talk about Resident Evil Village with you, my good friend. I'm going to turn this over to you. Why don't you give us a quick nutshell about what this game is about? Oh, also, let me lay down on the ground rules. I apologize. I apologize to everybody. I apologize most specifically to you, Corey. We're going to do this in Experience Points podcast fashion. Shout out to George Albor and Scott Juster of the Experience Points podcast. I'm a big fan of their work. I love their show. If you have never listened to their show, give them a listen. They do a great show. But I love what they do, and I'm stealing it right here and now. So we're going to first talk about Resident Evil in just the generalities, like the mechanics, the basic premise, the action, what it feels like. We're going to give thumbs up, thumbs down. Do we like this? Do we not like it? We're not going to spoil anything, but we will get to about halfway in the chat, and then I will say spoiler warning. And from that point forward, we will talk about the story beats that are spoiler heavy, twists and turns, surprises, anything like that. So if you're not playing Village yet and you think you're gonna, listen to the first part of this podcast right now. We're going to talk about just general stuff, no spoilers. And then you can bounce when I give you the spoiler warning, and then you'll just get, the basic experience. Come back to the show when you played it, and see what we thought about the rest. And of course, if you don't care about being spoiled, or if you've already listened to the show, feel free to ignore the warning and just listen to the whole thing. But for right now, Resident Evil Village, you are safe. There's no spoilers right now. It's just general stuff. So, Corey, keep it spoiler-free for the moment, and let's talk about Village.
All right, that is something that I can agree to. Let me set the scene for the game. So this is going to be a little weird because, like you said, you haven't played 7, and Village is a direct sequel to 7. And 7, as those might remember, kind of set a new... I don't even know what the word is. It took Resident Evil in a bit of a different direction because Resident Evil has always traditionally been a third-person survival horror game. Obviously started back with the original Resident Evil with fixed cameras. It was much more horror-focused. It was much more puzzle-y, and then as the games went on, most notably with 4, they became more action-packed, and so 4, 5, and 6 were more like pretty much like over-the-shoulder third-person shooters, pretty much, and 6 was this whole ridiculous Hollywood blockbuster with zombies action game, which I stand by it being like pretty good, but there's a lot of like bad shit in it, and I feel like 6 gets a little bit of a bad rap, but whatever. It's like my least favorite of the modern ones, but I still think it's fine. And then 7 kind of took a whole new direction for the series. It was the game is in first person, which to be I guess accurate, it's not the first Resident Evil that's been in first person, but it's the first Resident Evil that's not like a light gun-esque first person. So this one is the
first big budget mainline series game that was in first person.
Definitely. So it definitely took a lot of inspiration from, something like PT or Outlast, where 7 is much more... I'm not going to give too much away because I don't want to spoil this either, but 7 is just much more... It's kind of a return to classic Resident Evil. A lot of it takes place in like a house, much like the mansion from the old Resident Evil, and it's a little more puzzle based, but it's a lot more kind of cramped and kind of focused and kind of intense and dank and gross, and it's wonderful. I love Resident Evil 7. I have some pretty big issues with the story, but we're not going to get into that here. But the gameplay, when the game cutscenes and stuff get out of its own way, the gameplay is like marvelous. I've played it, I think, like 3 times over on PlayStation 4.
Wow,
I've played it 2 times over on PC, oddly enough.
Oh my god, you played it 5 fucking times?
I've played it several times, and there's a really good DLC for it. Chris Redfield appears in the game, and he has his own DLC chapter, which I think is a really great DLC. But even though Chris is in it, he's very much divorced kind of from all of the crap that Chris Redfield has been in, because it's kind of this new weird chapter. Basically the game, you're in Louisiana, which is interesting because I live in Louisiana. You're in a fictional town of Louisiana. You play as a guy named Ethan, who is what I can only describe as the untoasted white bread of Resident Evil video game protagonists.
You are not kidding.
He
dude.
is without a doubt the most bland, boring, obvious, dumb, just run of the mill. Like, I swear the guy's a Capcom. He
looks like a Bitcoin investor is what he looks like to me.
Yeah, he does. He's just so boring, but that's kind of beside the point. But basically, he's happily married to his wife named Mia. She somehow gets kidnapped. The premise of it is very Silent Hill 2-esque, actually, because he thinks she's dead, and then a few years later, he gets this random like video message from her in his email or something, and so she's like, "Help! I'm in Louisiana. Come save me," or whatever. And so he treks across the country to go to Louisiana. It turns out that there's this family of kind of like these very strange, like backwoods kind of hillbilly people that he thinks have taken her hostage. And of course there's, some kind of biohazard thing that comes into play because it's a Resident Evil game. So of course there's something like that in it. Not all is as it seems, but a lot of it is actually pretty grounded. Like, you're not, punching a boulder in the middle of a volcano like in 5. You're not flying helicopters through downtown Tokyo like in 6. You're just in this really gross, rundown house in Louisiana. It's just like the atmosphere in it is really just a chef's kiss. It's wonderful. And so I'm not going to spoil, obviously, how the game ends, but I will say that 8, A Village, the one we're talking about today, is a more or less a direct sequel to that, and it stars Ethan. You're back in the role as Ethan. However, instead of being in the United States, you are now living in this kind of Eastern European like on the outskirts of this village. Obviously, the game is called Village. It's very snowy. It's very cold. I personally think it's a really interesting locale for Resident Evil. A lot of it is outdoors, which is refreshing. It is a little kind of bland looking because a lot of it's snowy, so it's kind of brown and gray and white. But at the same time, like, I wouldn't expect, like, Resident Evil, other than maybe 5, aren't really known for being like colorful and neon or whatever. So I can kind of let that slide. But for one reason or another, which I will not divulge, basically Ethan finds himself in the middle of this kind of sort of cult-like village in Eastern Europe. He's on his own. He's trying to fight to save someone or figure out kind of how to both save a person he's after and get out of the village and survive. Basically, there are different types of monsters around, and as Brad mentioned, there is the giant vampire lady who's in it, which much buzz was made about her. I think Capcom really kind of accidentally struck gold with introducing her in marketing materials because she has been memed to hell and back at this point, and I think for good reason. Like, sometimes that kind of stuff annoys me with marketing, but I really think the audience just kind of ran with it. Oh,
dude, the hentai game is so strong, let me tell you.
So, like, basically he ends up in this village, and I don't know how much I want to divulge here. I feel like I'm going to, like, stop here.
Yeah, just stop right here, because we're going to accidentally spoil something.
But yeah,
that's
he's
a good
in the
enough
village.
thing.
He's fighting to get out. He might or might not be trying to save someone. There might or might not be some kind of cult happening. I've seen this comparison a lot, and I agree with it, that Village is kind of like the perfect middle ground between 4 and 7, which I think that's a pretty apt description. Brad, you can elaborate if you think so or not, but I came away from this really liking it, and we can get into some details in a second, but I thought this game was it was like everything I wanted it to be, more or less. I was rarely disappointed, really enjoyed it. Definitely a little more action focused. 7 is a little more claustrophobic and horror focused. But I'm really glad you played it, and I was worried that you would hate this game, if I'm being completely frank. I thought we would come to the show, and I would be like, oh my god, let me gush about it, and you'd be like, oh, like, this game fucking sucks, or whatever. So I'm glad you liked it, but I will turn the mic to you so you can fill in the holes and tell me what you thought, and we can do some surface level stuff from your end.
Yeah, I ended up really liking it a lot by the end of it. I wasn't sure what to expect, and to be honest, I wasn't sure I was going to make it through because, as I've said many times in the show, my fear tolerance these days is like nil. It is in the toilet, dude. I get scared in games. I don't like feeling scared in games. I don't like that feeling of disempowerment or being chased or anything. So I wasn't sure. I mean, I was afraid I was going to throw my $60 in the garbage, right? Like, I get through like half an hour and then I'd have to bail because I'd be too scared. But I will say that I have not played 7. But I liked this a lot, and I appreciate that it is a mix of horror and a lot of action. There's like way more action than I thought there was going to be, which for me was good because, like, when I'm shooting things, I've got 6 guns, I have plenty of bullets, and I'm shooting monsters. Like, that's fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But it's like when you're on the run and hiding in a closet and you have like only 1 life kit left and like something's chasing you, like, that's when I don't like to play games. So this worked for me in a good way because I feel like there are definitely horror elements, but for me, ultimately, it felt more like an action game, like maybe 3/4 action, 1/4 horror of what I would define as like actual horror. And that worked for me, but I really liked it a lot. And I will say, I'm not a big fan of first-person games either. In general, it's not my preferred way to play a game. I like third-person a lot better, just personal preference. So I wasn't sure if that was going to work either, but that ended up being okay. The thing that I find is interesting, let's talk about the good stuff first, like mechanically. What I like about this game, one thing that I really thought was interesting was the structure of the game, which I absolutely had no idea about until I started playing. So, like, they call it Village for a good reason, because you get to this village, and it is like basically a hub, which I didn't expect. Like, I thought, most Resident Evil games that I've played in the past, I played all of them except for 7, are not like this. Like, you don't have an open world. You don't have carte blanche to go back and forth between areas. That's pretty unusual for a Resident Evil game. I mean, maybe 7's like that. I don't know. But the rest of them are not. And so when you get to the village and you find out, like, oh, here's like all these doors that I can't open, I'll open them later. And oh, here's an obvious shortcut that's going to bring me back to the village when I go to some other random level I haven't gotten to yet. And here's some gates that I'm going to go through later. Like, it was interesting to use that as the hub. And as you played through the game, more and more of the village became accessible. I thought that was pretty cool. And how the 4 major areas that you end up going to are just kind of branching off of a central hub. Neat design, and I really like how they kept incorporating the central location. So it felt like you were in a place and that you had pretty good mastery of the place, and I had a pretty good sense of where things were, and it felt like things were really in a place. It didn't feel like you were just randomly warping to some other random level. Like, it felt like it all kind of connected pretty well, kind of like in a Dark Souls-ish fashion. So I thought that was pretty good. I mean, what did you feel about having this hub design?
I feel largely the same. Much like you, I mean, I wasn't really sure what to expect going in, but I think the way that they sort of centered, because it's almost got like the open world section and then kind of like the dungeons that you go in and out of. And I really appreciated that level design, because every time you come back to the village, there's always something new to find. There's always some new sort of like treasure or loot that you can find. There's often perhaps like a new enemy around. So you don't, it's kind of a safe hub, but there's also maybe some threats here and there, depending on when you come back and, you know, what chapter you just finished. But I was really impressed with the way that they sort of laid everything out. And I don't really think you're wrong by saying that. I can't recall a Resident Evil that's been like this before. Like 7, you kind of have some free reign of like exploring the house and everything, but there's not really like, I mean, it's similar, but just on a smaller scale. But Village, like the village itself actually feels very big. And even though I've played through this game twice already, every time I came back to the village after like a dungeon area, I would still get lost in that fucking village. I would have to look at the map all the time. Because, like, even though it's accessible and I like that and it's generally pretty safe, I was looking at my map all the damn time because there's just, like, winding paths. Sometimes you have to go through a house to get to a different area of a path or, you know, climb under something. And I do like that as you keep coming back to the village, sort of, like you said, like different kind of shortcuts and stuff unlock, or maybe you'll come back with some key you didn't have before and, you know, be able to unlock some house and it gives you a shortcut. That, it was very cool, but I still got lost a lot in the village, even though that's not really a complaint, because I liked, you know, kind of continuously feeling like there was always something new to explore, you know, always kind of having to reference my map. Like, I'm not afraid of looking at a map in a video game. Like, sometimes that can be really engaging for me. And I just really appreciated the way that they paced everything. I know I don't want to get into spoiler territory, but I've heard complaints about the overall pacing of the game, and I didn't
really. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, I was too, because I didn't really read any reviews or watch any videos about it until after I finished it, and like I have watched like a couple YouTube videos and like read a couple things about it, and it seems like everybody is like, you know, talks about, I'm not going to say which part, but there's like, you know, a certain section where they think it's kind of drawn out and everything. And when I played it, I was like, this pacing is excellent. Like, it just kind of crescendos really well. It has really wonderful ebbs and flows, and all of the sort of dungeons that you go to, they all have their own flavor, and some of them kind of pull from old Resident Evils and feel like an old game, and some pull more action, and some are more horror focused, some are more, you know, maze focused or action focused. And I just thought that it constantly felt fresh to me, and coming back to the hub world in the middle, you know, gave it a good sense of familiarity, even if I didn't always feel safe. But I just thought that the way they set up the world and the pacing, like, it was just so good. I was not disappointed in the pacing at all as I played through it.
I agree with you. I thought it was actually like exceedingly well paced. I did not find that there was dead time. I felt like I always had something to be working on. There was like little side quests and stuff. I mean, I felt like each area, like you said, had its own theme, had its own flavor. And I appreciated that because each one was different than the last. And I, you know, when I got through the first main chunk, I'm like, okay, that's good. I hope I don't have to do that again. And you don't, like, you don't really have to do that again. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, I just didn't want to do like 10 more hours of the same thing. Right. And you don't. Like, I mean, I think the first area and the last area do have some echoes of each other. The second area is its own wildly different thing. And the third area is, again, wildly different of its own thing. So I really feel like you got a good sampling of like all the different things that Resident Evil can do. Like all those are kind of echoes to stuff they've done in the past, but it's all wrapped up together, and you kind of go through it all. So it's like this little flavor tour of like what Resident Evil can be, which I thought was really neat. I really appreciated that. Another thing that I really liked a lot were like the gamey bits, which I didn't hear anybody talking about. And I mean by like just video game ass shit that they throw in there for you to do. Like I was expecting to be scared the whole time, and I started playing this. I'm like, oh wait a minute, this is gamey stuff. Like there's a bunch of little wooden goats. You got to find the wooden goats and like shoot the goats. There's a side quest where you have to find different exotic meats, and you have to find the animal to get the meat. And it's just like you don't have to do it. It's like a totally separate thing. There are these little puzzles where you have a ball and you drop a ball in this little maze. It's like a little statue thing, and you kind of rock it back and forth and like play pachinko with this ball. There's like little treasures that like show up on your map, and it's like, yeah, there's treasure chests. Go find the. I mean, it's gamey ass shit, dude. Like you can't be peeing your pants with fear when you're like, oh, I'm doing a ball puzzle and I shot a wooden goat and I'm going to find a treasure chest. Like they do these little side areas which are not required, and you can just do them if you want to. And I thought that was so cool, like just doing like these little micro side quests for like a better gun or some reward or something, kind of like engaged the gameplay aspect of my brain, where I wasn't living in the whole, I am in this experience and I am immersed and I am scared. It was just like, oh, I'm doing stuff with agency, and I'm choosing to go into this fight because I know I'm going to get a good reward, and I'm going back and forth and doing like all these little extras that I think are they're kind of just fun. Like they're just fun. They're not scary. They're not gross. They're just something to do. I really liked those bits. How did you feel about those?
Yeah, I really like those too. And that kind of like echoes what I was saying about, because a lot of that stuff kind of happens in the hub world when you come back to it. So it's like after you've been through either maybe like an intense like exploration dungeon, or like an intense like kind of scary dungeon, or maybe like a really action focused dungeon, you kind of get to like turn your brain off a little bit. And I mean that in a good way, where you like come back to the hub
It's like
world.
relief. It's like the pressure's off for a minute.
Yeah. So it's not, because like one thing that I could maybe, and I think this is a good thing about Resident Evil 7, but one thing I could leverage about 7 is that like it is more often pushed toward claustrophobic horror than it is action, even though there are some like actiony bits in it. And I appreciate that, because I mean, I like horror games a lot more than you do. So I like the feeling of, constantly checking the corners, constantly moving slowly because I'm scared about what's going to be in front of me, and, monitoring my ammo and all that stuff. But Village kind of brought these different I don't know, like genres together, where it's like once you're finished with this kind of like really arduous dungeon area, you come out of it and you can just like play the fucking game, and like go explore stuff and like kind of be silly. And I also really liked that they brought the weapons vendor back, although I mean there's a whole discussion to be had about how grotesque and inappropriate the shopkeeper is in the game. But the fact that they brought back the shop where you have like all these guns at your disposal, because 7 there was a much tighter focus on only having like like 2 handguns and like 1 or 2 shotguns, but in this game it's like you've got the choice as you play through the whole game of having like several pistols, several shotguns, and you
can pack a pretty good arsenal. For sure.
It's pretty intense. And you have like fucking like pipe bombs and like mines that people can step on and blow up, and it definitely lends itself to a much more arcadey experience. And I know you probably won't do this, but like I've played through Village twice already. I've already started a third playthrough, as a matter of fact, and the game kind of lends itself, because it has New Game Plus, so it lends itself to that like completionist thing where you beat the game. Because when I beat the game the first time, there were guns that I didn't even buy, that I didn't even touch, but like all your money carries over to the next game. So when I came back to it, I could buy like the secret bonus weapons that you unlock from finishing the game, and then just other standard weapons that are there that I couldn't afford or I didn't want to buy. So it kind of keeps things fresh, because you're kind of once you feel like, oh, I'm getting maybe tired of this pistol that I'm using, the game's like, well, here's a new one for you if you want to buy it. And then you can upgrade them. You can buy ammo. You can, level them up. You can upgrade the firepower. You can buy a bigger clip. And I really liked how it balances that, kind of more serious, like silly Resident Evil story stuff with just like the straight up, like, here's the video gamey arcade shit. And I think they really just did it perfectly.
I totally agree, dude. And that absolutely plays into a large part of why I was able to make it through the game, right? I mean, number one, your observation about the arcading and the play of the Village as compared to like the potential horror of the dungeons. It's a good balance, right? So like whenever I was starting to feel like, okay, maybe this is getting a little bit too intense for me, the segment would be over and I'd be back to the village and it's like, oh, okay, I'm just killing a couple zombies or whatever, no big deal. And like the pressure was off, and then I could like do some gamey shit, find a treasure chest, or go to talk to the shopkeeper or whatever. And like it would just give me like a chance to like mentally like refresh and come back, and then I would feel ready to take on the next section. And then it would like kind of delve a little bit into the horror or scary parts sometimes, and then you come back to it. So I think that was really, really masterful pacing. We talked about it on the show a couple episodes ago, but I read an interview with one of the developers of Resident Evil, and he said that a lot of the feedback they got after 7 was that it was too scary. A lot of their core fans felt like it was too intense and it was too fearful for them, and it kind of missed some of that action feeling that people really do want from Resident Evil. So he's like, okay, so this is, like you said, a good compromise between the horror scariness of 7 and the action of something like 6 or 5. We want to kind of get it like in the middle to please the biggest amount of fans. And I think they did a great job. So as someone who initially perceived 7 to be too scary, for them to get me back in and to actually play the whole thing and then to even have a good time on top of that, I think was really masterful design. Totally agree about the guns and stuff. I mean, having the guns, having those options, having a quick breather, talking to the shopkeeper, that was all great and just really contributed to like the gameplay side of it, where it wasn't just me crawling through dark environments with like no resources, which is something I probably wouldn't have been around for. So I think that is all really good stuff. I really like it a lot. I will say though, okay, so let's talk about a couple things that I didn't care for so much, and then you feel free to chip in. Number one, I feel like Ethan is not mobile enough. I feel like I really wanted some kind of a dodge or something. I realize this is not like your balls to the wall action, but like a couple times I would find myself surrounded by enemies and I'm just like, okay, dude, like I can move faster than Ethan is moving. I can roll a little bit, even my chubby, overweight, middle-aged self. Like I'm a little bit more mobile than this Bitcoin investor, right? Like I can do something that this guy cannot. I was a little bit frustrated by that. So there is a quick turn, which I didn't discover until about like 5 hours into the game. So fuck off, Capcom. You should have told me about that at the beginning. That was nice when I discovered that. But overall, how do you feel about Ethan's mobility and that aspect of it?
I kind of agree. I think because I had come off of 7 and I knew what he felt like there, it lines up. But the interesting thing about Village for me is that they even make it a point really early in the game to be like, oh, well, after the Louisiana incident, we gave like military training to Ethan.
Yeah.
And they try to make him sound like
super call it out. They totally do.
Like he's some like fucking commando. And like the only military training he got that translated into the video game was like in 8, there's like a guard button where he puts his arms up, which that's in 7. But in 8 now, if you guard right after, you can like kick an enemy away from you. That was not in 7. And so I'm like, wow, what great training they gave him. He can now kick an enemy away from himself.
U.S. military secrets laid bare for everyone to find out here. And I never used the guard, dude. Did you ever use the guard?
I did. I didn't use it as much in 7 just because I always forgot that it was an option. In 8, I definitely used it. I mean, I didn't use it a ton, but I used it more than maybe I thought I would. But usually if I were surrounded by enemies or whatever, I would just like either kind of run away or I'm always like backing up slowly as enemies are sort of, crowding around you. Because I noticed that this, like there was kind of an enemy behavior pattern where there was a thing where like, if an enemy was coming toward you, because it kind of does the thing that like 4 does, where the enemies will kind of run up to you, but then they will slow down because they're not just going to like run up and cut your head off. But so they give you a little bit of breathing room, but they still move erratically enough to make them difficult to aim on, which I think is great. But I would notice that as enemies were coming into me, as long as I was like slowly backing away from them, their first strike would like never hit me. Like they would always hit the ground in front of me.
Oh, interesting.
So,
okay.
Especially with more of like the zombie-ish enemies. With the lichen dudes, those were a little bit different. They would sometimes just run up and like bite my hand off. But with the skeleton-y dudes, they would pretty much like always give like a giant swing of their sword, or if they have a weapon in their hand. And as long as I was just slowly backing up, they would always miss me. And then that would leave them pretty much open for like a counter shot to the head or whatever. So I think coming off of 7, I was just a little more used to his mobility being limited, but I think it's really silly that they sort of call out that they gave him like advanced military training. And I mean, yeah, he's like, he has more weapons and he's more familiar with them and more capable with them from just like a shooty bang perspective than he was in 7. But at the same time, like all of that military training equaled out to him being able to kick an enemy away after he like blocks. So I thought that was a little bit silly.
I mean, I call that junior high school training. That's not really military training for me. So that was something I felt like needed a little bit. I mean, not crazy. I didn't need him to be like an action superstar, but like his limited mobility felt a little bit unrealistic to me. So that was slightly frustrating. It wasn't a huge issue, but there was a couple times when I'm like, oh, fucking God, I wish I could like roll out of the way of this thing or something. One other thing that my biggest complaint about the game, and to be clear, I like this game a lot, way better than I thought I was going to. But one thing that I really dislike is the enemy design. I think the enemy design is garbage in this game. I really don't like it. And to be specific, just the lack of color and the lack of specificity in the designs. I think the village itself looks good, like snowy, gray. That's all fine. That makes sense. I think the individual, dungeon areas, for lack of a better term, those all look great too. But what I don't like is the enemies themselves, because there are many enemies where they are just all black, or they're all gray, or like super dark brown. Like they don't have any variation in their color. They don't have any interesting textures going on. Some of them have like a lot of like weird hair effects that just looks weird and messy. And they have these really strange, undefined bestial faces. Like they call them lichens. And there was a little bit of like wolfiness in some of the PR. Like if you look at the cover art of the game, the image alongside of Chris Redfield is like a wolf. They don't look like werewolves to me. They just look like these weird, just undefined dark things. And I'm like, okay, if these were like, they would have some color to them. Maybe not their skin, maybe their fur, but maybe their clothes. Like maybe their skin is dark or brown or black or furry or whatever. But like, they just were all like really monotone, and I just thought they were so boring to look at. I just did not like them. What they reminded me mostly of is they looked like stuff that was cut from Bloodborne and that was discarded by FromSoft developers, and Capcom swooped in and was like, ooh, we like these fuzzy black zombies that don't look like anything. We're going to use these on the cheap. We got these for free. They look like shitty Bloodborne leftovers, and I just really don't like them. Some enemies are cool. Not every enemy in the game is bad. I mean, obviously there are some high points. But like your generic enemies, most of the fodder enemies that you're shooting, they look terrible. They look really boring and dumb.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with you, because like everything you're saying is like factually correct. They are just very gray and kind of not particularly interesting to look at. But I think for me, when I was playing it, anytime enemies were on the screen, I was just like so sort of like frantically alarmed that I like their physical makeup was like the last thing I was paying attention to. Like I was never like, oh my God, I wish these enemies were like more distinct or colorful. I was just like, all right, let me back up slowly and try to nail this headshot and miss it 4 times and then wonder if I've ever played a first-person shooter before. That was pretty much my train of thought most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. And, there's sometimes not much time to like actually like stare at the enemies. You're often overwhelmed and whatever, and that's fine. But like when you really take a look at them, especially like there is a character viewer, you can like unlock some character models and look at those. I'm like, man, these guys are terrible. They look so dull and gray and just boring. It's like these tubs of dishwater walking around when you're shooting them. I'm not a fan. That's one place where I feel like Capcom kind of dropped the ball. But other than that, I think it's okay. Any complaints that you have about the game before we get into spoiler territory here?
I just want to say, if you're disappointed with the enemy design in 8, when you go back to play 7, prepare to be like let down extra hard. I won't spoil it, but you're gonna play 7 and be like, what the fuck even are these enemies? Because they're on another level, below sea level of being interesting. But the only other complaint, and I can't really say a lot, I mean, I probably have other complaints, I'm just not super duper thinking of them right now, is but the one that comes to mind is and I can't say that much because it'll get into spoiler territory, but I just kind of think the overall story of the game, and I mean, Resident Evil is not known for having the best stories on the planet. In fact, most of the games, the stories are like pretty fucking dumb. But a lot of people, when 7 came out, were like, oh, this is the best story that Resident Evil has ever done. And I played it and I was like, am I playing the same game that everybody else is here? Because I thought the story of 7 was incredibly stupid. It's basically just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre Resident Evil edition, and I didn't think it was interesting. It was very much one of those stories that I think everybody liked because all it did was just pull a bunch of references from like horror pop culture and just like smash them all into a Resident Evil game. And I thought a lot of the story was really stupid, and I had a big problem with 7 because I have a thing with video games where like I get mad if a video game doesn't get out of its own way, and 7 is a little bit like that, where and maybe it's because 7 was in VR at the time. It was like a big, you know, kind of AAA PSVR title that it just tried to be very cutscene-y and very kind of like shocking in its cutscenes. And I didn't play it in VR, but it just really fell flat for me. And I like during the whole opening of that game, I just want to be like, all right, just like let me play the fucking game. And I like that about 8 because even though the opening is still kind of slow, like once it gets out of its way, you just get to play the game. And I love when a game gets out of its own way and lets you play it. But I will say, the story stuff in 8 I thought was kind of stupid. And the fact that 8, and this is going to be weird for you if you play 7 after this, because 8 kind of like retroactively affects things from 7 here and there. So they come together as a good package in that way. But that also didn't mean I came away from 8 necessarily satisfied with the decisions they made. So the story, I was like, I could kind of take it or leave it. And plus Ethan being like literally the most uninteresting video game protagonist I've played as in recent memory certainly does not help. But the overall story, I was just like, I could, take it or leave it.
Fair enough. We can talk about this more in the spoiler section. But before we do that, I think that probably wraps up the non-spoilery section. So let's just give a really quick wrap up for people who don't want to be spoiled, and then I'll put up a warning here. So overall, Corey, it sounds like you really like this game a lot. Would you recommend it? What is your really nutshell capsule final thought here?
Oh, I love it. I think if you're a Resident Evil fan, especially if you played and liked Resident Evil 7, you will love it. And I'm really refreshed to hear from you, having not played 7, that you came to it and loved it, and it makes you want to go and play 7. And I secretly hope that, with the feedback from the developer saying that 7 was too scary, that 8 will give 7 this kind of new surging audience, because I think 7 is really, really, once it gets out of its way, I think it's really good, and 8 just builds on that in really interesting ways. So I think they go together really well as a package deal. I mean, 7 is tighter, it's more horror focused, it's a little shorter, but both of them are great. I would highly recommend 8 to both Resident Evil fans and maybe even not Resident Evil fans, because it truly doesn't really feel like a classic Resident Evil, but it's still like excellent on its own terms.
I agree. I came into this game not really knowing what to expect. I just didn't want to be left out of the conversation. And I was really pleasantly surprised. I feel like the game is just a really fun game to play on its own. But I feel like it has great pacing. It has some really neat cutscenes, set pieces. It has some really neat moments. I think overall, it was just really a joy to play. I think the hub structure is really brilliant and works really well for this game. And it had a good balance of tense moments and actiony, fun, goofy moments. And I think altogether, it was a really fun ride. And I liked it. Actually, I liked it so much that I do plan on going back and playing 7, which I originally passed on because it just looked too scary for me. But now that I know the events of 8, and I will say that 8, you will have a different opinion on this, but as someone who didn't play 7, to me, it seemed like 8 spoiled the fuck out of everything that happened in 7. But in a way, it was good, right? Because it kind of gave me motivation to go back and see it for myself. And so I don't know that I would have ever played 7 if I didn't like 8 so much. But I will. I have it downloaded on my Xbox. I'll probably crack it pretty soon. So I'm planning on doing that. But I think overall it's really good. I would recommend it to people who want just a shootery game. If you like Resident Evil, if you want some kind of gross horror. It's got a little bit of something for everybody. And it is in the middle in a good way. I don't think it's too much action. I don't think it's too much scary. I don't think it's too much gamey. I think it's a good balance, I think. And maybe we'll inspire people to check out the rest of the series. Who knows? So I think that is a thumbs up for me. That is a thumbs up from Corey on Resident Evil Village. Now, this is the end of the spoiler-free section. We're going to talk for a few minutes about just everything in the story, the weirdness, the surprises, the left turns, the plot twists, all that stuff. We're going to be talking about that in just 1 minute. So this is your nuclear level spoiler warning. If you don't want to be spoiled on the story or any of the surprises, do not keep listening. There is nothing left to the show after this other than the closing and the spoilers. So if you've listened this far and don't want to be spoiled, feel free to bounce and you're not going to really miss anything. Of course, if you don't want to miss the show and you don't care about being spoiled, please continue to listen. or finish the game and come back and see what we thought afterwards. But for right now, this is your final spoiler warning. We are about to spoil literally everything about Resident Evil Village, and there will be no holds barred. So this is your final warning, and the spoiler warning is up. Okay, Corey, couple things, I guess. So I didn't play 7. I did play 8, and a lot of crazy shit happens in 8. But I will say one thing that I thought was, you tell me if it's cool or stupid. I couldn't decide if it's cool or stupid. I thought it was really neat that when you finally got to the end of the game, it was kind of revealed that the woman who was behind everything in the village was like a mentor to the person who started the Umbrella Corporation. And so there was definitely like some story connections there. I was not sure how they're going to tie that together. I wasn't sure what this was going to be. And, I'm not like super mega invested in the story of Resident Evil or the continuity or anything, but I thought that was kind of cool that you like find the lab and you find these connections. And I mean, I assume that this really ties a lot into 7. I mean, it seemed to me like pretty obvious. They were talking a lot about what happened in the village was really influential in Resident Evil 7. Like everything that happened in 7 seemed to be because somebody did some stuff in the village in 8. I mean, to me, I thought it all came together pretty well, but I'm not reading the FAQ. I don't know. I'm not checking it for facts or anything. I'm not doing accuracy. But to me, I thought that was pretty cool. And that was a big part of what inspired me to want to go and play 7, because I'm like, oh, well, this all seems kind of cool. I'm interested to see how this plays out when Ethan's doing it on his own in Louisiana. What did you think about all those story bits? Like, would they work for you? Were they cool? Were they dumb? Like, what did you think?
I thought, because Resident Evil has this kind of like interesting and somewhat silly pattern of, it's like because I mean, Resident Evil, for better or worse, I think definitely takes its like story, and when I say story, I mean like for all of the games tied together, like way too seriously. And I thought it was like 7 and 8 would have been perfect, just standalone games that had nothing to do with anything that came before it, with the T-Virus or the Spencer Mansion or Umbrella or any of that stuff. But they weave that a little bit into 8. It's not really in 7 that I can remember. 7 is very much a standalone thing, other than Chris Redfield showing up. But even him showing up is not like, I don't know, he doesn't show up and like talk about all of his past experiences with Umbrella or anything. So he's kind of a reinvented character in 7 a little bit. Chris
seems very different. I'm kind of wondering what happened to Chris, because he's come a long way from the dude in the very first game to now. I mean, he's like buffer and weird. He's a super special agent and he's doing all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't even really recognize him as being the same character anymore.
Yeah, he's definitely like in 7, it seemed like they kind of, I mean, I don't think they like meant to kind of throw away his entire past and like reboot him, but it kind of felt that way in 7. But then in 8, you get the continuity of understanding that this is still the same Chris that's been through everything from the Spencer Mansion to Code Veronica to 5, and 6, and then he is still the same character going forward. And I don't think the game needed to do that, but I also appreciate that it did. And like when you're talking about the woman who's behind everything, Mother Miranda, in 8, she's kind of like the big bad at the end. The fact that the game kind of tied that back to the Spencer estate and Spencer Mansion and the founding of Umbrella, like they didn't need to do it, but it was kind of like a fun little Easter egg, like, because it kind of has this big reveal moment, like about, I don't know, 85% of the way through the game, and it didn't need to do that. And I'm not mad that it did it, but I was just like, oh, okay, like this is kind of cool, because I remember them trying to do that in 5 whenever you're playing as Chris in Africa, and there's like a chapter when you're in the underground caves and you find this like these flowers that are in this cave, and it turns out that like those were the flowers that they used for the T-Virus, and they synthesized them. And like 5 didn't need to do that, and it was kind of silly then, but it was, a nice little nod to the series. And then 8, it's kind of turning around and doing the same thing, where they talk about, Spencer and Miranda like teaming up on these archaeological digs, like, decades ago. And then it kind of loops it back where he took his inspiration from her and what they learned in the caves in order to start Umbrella. And then I guess he like found the flowers in Africa, and that's what got him on the T-Virus. And, they didn't need to do it, but I thought it was, cute. I thought it was nice. Like it could have been its own standalone adventure, but I'm definitely not mad that they did it. And I do appreciate, kind of reminds me in a way of like Metal Gear Solid 4, where it tied up like literally every loose end in the entire series. Like I feel like Resident Evil 8, like with every game they release, they're trying to do that. But like when the story of Resident Evil started in such a ridiculous manner, like I feel like every game they try to like rationalize it, and I'm like, Capcom, like you don't have to do this. Like you we're talking about people running around a spooky mansion shooting zombies. Like you don't have to make like an Oscar level story out of this and keep trying to like tie it up. But I do appreciate the fact that they did it, and the fact that you get to take control of Chris and he sort of has the big reveal, which, you know,
that was a surprise for me at the end. Controlling Chris was a big surprise for me.
Yeah, I totally wasn't expecting that either, but I also liked it because it, I've seen some people complain about that as well, but I think it, you know, it's like through the whole game, even though it's action focused, it's not really like a super action game. But then for that like 30-minute segment of playing as Chris, it's just like a balls to the wall. Like you've got like 500 bullets. It's your action moment. And I thought it was good for the pacing because you've been creeping around this like dank factory for 2 hours.
Yeah,
and
you just fucking go wild at the end. Just like get your revenge on everybody and just go crazy. It's nuts.
Yeah, I really like that. And the fact that they save kind of the story reveal for Chris to witness because he's the one that's kind of been through it all for the past, you know, I don't know, 30 years or whatever. I thought that was a really nice touch. I mean, they didn't need to do it, but I still appreciated it. I thought it was handled very well, and I thought it was pretty cool the way that they tied it all back to the first game.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was pretty neat, and I do appreciate that about Capcom, where they have produced such a wide variety of Resident Evil experiences. Like when you just look at them mechanically, I mean, there's like first-person shooters, there's multiplayer online, there's like third-person action, there's first-person, there's horror, there's, you know, they span the gamut, right? But they always try to like keep it in the same universe or keep some kind of narrative thread together so that those games like all exist in the same kind of mind space. Maybe they're not so close together, some are closer than others, but I appreciate that they do it just from a creative perspective, you know, like this IP they have, they're kind of shepherding it in and trying to keep it all in the same world. I think is really great. I do appreciate that very much. I was a little bit confused though. Maybe you can clarify. They were saying, if I understand correctly, that the umbrella symbol comes from the village and it was some ancient symbol that was just in the architecture there. And the dude who starts Umbrella saw it and thought it was really cool, so he used it for his own symbol. Because that to me was a little bit of a bait and switch. Because when you get to the village and you start seeing some of the ruins, you're like, oh man, here's the Umbrella symbol. So does that mean that Umbrella was here? This is all put on by Umbrella. But then at the end, it's like, no, this was actually here before Umbrella, and this is where he got his idea. He stole it from the village. I mean, that's kind of how I read it. That's what happened, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much exactly how you described. Like to me, it was like he was sort of being mentored by Miranda, and he just like happened to see the Umbrella logo looking thing in there, and he liked it, and that's what he decided to use for Umbrella when he started it.
Okay. Because I was like really thinking, like, before I knew what the story reveals were, I was like, okay, so what? We got another lab underneath the ground, and Umbrella's like doing their dirty shit like they did. But actually, no, it's like a total turnaround. It's not at all Umbrella doing it, but it is in the same vein and related. So I thought that was pretty interesting. One thing about the story, which kind of bugged me, and I know it really bugged Dan Weissenberger, who reviewed the game for us at Game Critics. I think this was his biggest complaint, and he didn't include it in the review, or you know, he might have mentioned it obliquely. He did not spoil it in the review, but like, it's funny because in the story there's like one kind of like a really big plot hole, or just something that really stupid happens, where a big crux of the story is that at the beginning of the game, Ethan sees Mia get shot, and that's what kind of kicks off the whole adventure. Like he's trying to get his daughter back, and he wants revenge for Mia, and et cetera, et cetera. But it turns out that it was not Mia. Mia had been replaced by Mother Miranda at some point because Mother Miranda can change her appearance. And we start the game by seeing Chris Redfield jump into Ethan's house and blow who we think is Mia away, but it's not really. And at no point does Chris ever say, hey, bro, that wasn't your wife at all. Like, I mean, if he had told that to Ethan from the beginning, it could have been, maybe they could have teamed up, or maybe they could have like worked on this adventure in a different way or whatever. But it ends up being Ethan just like, you know, John Wayne lone star hero just going off on his own, doing whatever. And he is actively, you know, he's angry at Chris and he thinks Chris is the bad guy, et cetera, et cetera. And then when we get it to the end of the game, I mean, there's even like a moment where somebody on Chris's team is like, Chris, you should have told Ethan the plan. He's like, whatever. He's like, no, you should have told him the plan. Like, they clearly, Capcom's writers know, like, it was kind of bullshit that at no point did Chris mention what was going down. I mean, kind of stupid. I kind of didn't like that very much. What did you think about it? Did it bother you or didn't bother you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that because I think the entire story of the game is pretty stupid, that it was just one of those like suspension of disbelief things for me where I was like, yeah, this is kind of stupid. Like, I feel like they could have done the whole setup a little bit better. Like, maybe they could have set it up better if like Mia had gotten murdered, but Chris was like never even in the first scene. And maybe it was just like random commandos that kidnapped him or something. Because of Chris at the very beginning of the game, he could have just been like, oh, like that wasn't Mia, it was an imposter. But that would have like basically canceled the entire game. Or maybe they could have like done a thing where you would switch back and forth between Chris and Ethan over the course of the game like a bunch of times. And yeah, like they could have teamed up or something. But I mean, I think the story, even though I'm not really agreeing with this, kind of rationalize it in a way where it's like, you know, Chris is this like, ooh, like suave army commando dude who's like seeing all this shit. And Ethan is just like some like fucking white guy. And so Chris, you know, perhaps rightfully was just like, oh, well, if we bust in and like murder like Mia / Miranda, like Ethan is like basically like way too stupid to be able to like have the capacity to like fight back. And then, you know, much to his chagrin or whatever, you know, Ethan ends up being, you know, good enough to fight through the village and everything. But yeah, I mean, they could have definitely handled the beginning of the story. It's like they just like blew their load a little too fast on wanting to reveal Chris. And I think they could have, you know, maybe waited to reveal him, even though he's on the fucking cover of the game and he's only in the game for like 30 minutes. So I don't know. It was a little silly, but I mean, the whole story is silly. So I guess I just kind of let it slide as I played it because I cannot take these games' stories seriously to save my life at this point.
Yeah, it just felt a little sloppy to me. I mean, if nothing else, it could have been, you know, Ethan just saying, "I don't care what you say, Chris. I'm just gonna go do whatever," and then him just going rogue, and the entire game could have still happened the way it happened anyway. I mean, it just was kind of a weird. It's like one of those movies where, like you just said, it kind of cancels the whole thing. Like if the main character told one sentence to the other character at the beginning of the movie, there wouldn't be a movie because the whole thing would have happened, right? Like I find that to be very frustrating. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about the sections. I feel like overall, the sections were not too spooky. The first section with Lady Dimitrescu is how they pronounce it, which kind of threw me for a loop. Was fairly scary. The second section with the dollhouse, that was super scary. That was the scariest part of the whole game for me. That was almost a little bit too scary. When I saw that there were closets that had the eye holes that were expressly in every room for the sole purpose of hiding in them, I was like, fuck, this is exactly what I didn't want to do. This is exactly what I did not sign up for. I do not like closets where you hide in them, running from room to room. Fuck that shit, everything about that shit. But then you go to the watery area and you see the giant fish monster swimming around in the water the whole time, which I thought was interesting. Like, you know, most games would have held that back and just had like a big cutscene and then you start the battle. But like you see that monster the entire time and knowing that he's down there kind of gives a different flavor to the proceedings. I mean, I thought those sections were pretty cool. What did you think about all those sections?
Well, something that I really liked on more of like a macro note is that something that I really, and I don't think enough video games do this, but something that I really love and respect about this game. And I love it because one of my favorite games of all time, Deus Ex Human Revolution, did the exact same thing where there is this very like intro, kind of slow burn intro, which that, you know, maybe isn't the best thing, especially on replays of the game. But you get to a certain point, maybe like, I don't know, an hour in or something like that, where the game very explicitly kind of shows you like, all right, here are like the 4 big enemies that you're going to have to get through. So it automatically sets this bar for how the game is going to be paced. And I love when games do that because Deus Ex Human Revolution did the same thing where, you know, in the opening sequence, you play as Adam Jensen, his scientist ex-girlfriend gets kidnapped. And in those moments, you see all of the sort of like big bad bosses that you're going to fight through the rest of the game. So you have an idea of how the game is going to be paced because they introduce everything. Meanwhile, in Deus Ex Mankind Divided, the follow-up to it, the last boss, he's very like kind of like vaguely in the game and you don't really know if he's a friend or if he's not. So it kind of sets up the game to be paced in a way that is unexpected and weird. But I love that Village just kind of like puts you in that cutscene where it introduces everybody when he's captured and it shows you all the enemies. So you know that you're going to kind of have to get through them one by one in order to get to Miranda. And the biggest criticism I can offer here is that there's not enough Mother Miranda in the game. Like, she is set up, she is like the last boss, like the big bad of the game. And she shows up for all of like, I don't know, 20 seconds in the game, even though she's the one that has the highest stakes for what's going on in the village. But it still sets everybody up. And I wasn't expecting, like you said earlier, the game to kind of take on this sort of like it's got like its quadrants where you kind of are in this one sealed dungeon area for this boss. Once you're over, that's it. You can never go back to that area. You go back to the village, you go to the next dungeon, you go to that boss, you go to the next dungeon. And I thought the way that they paced everything out was really, really well done. And the fact that they had a reveal at the beginning that kind of showed everything you were going to go up against, I thought was really, really smart and really helped the pacing of the game. But I did really appreciate the different quadrants of the game because, like you said, the Lady Dimitrescu, her mansion is very classic Resident Evil. It's kind of scary. It's paced slowly. The area where you're in the basement and you're in like the up to your knees and like the blood wine stuff, that area was just like chef's kiss for like pacing and intensity. And then you get to House Beneviento, which is like basically the capsule PT game in it where you're unarmed, you're solving puzzles, you're not fighting anything. It's very horror walking simulator, which I loved. I mean, I love those kind of games. So it was nice that they like had that nice, like just straight up like capsule horror experience in the middle of it. And then, you go to the fish monster, and the fish monster part was very sort of Resident Evil 4 to me, where it's like, kind of like everything's on edge. It's very like balls to the wall. You don't know if this big fish monster is going to jump out and attack you. And you're kind of like, running across these like flooded rooftops trying to navigate this weird flooded area of the village. And meanwhile, the fish is flopping everywhere and you're worried he's going to, just jump up and eat you alive. And then you have a lot of the action focused stuff next, which is like the enemy stronghold. And that part gets really action heavy where you're kind of going through these caves, trying to get to this castle to get this key or whatever. And it's basically just like a bunch of like big Resident Evil 4 style kind of big shootouts and everything. And they've got the strategically placed, red barrels you shoot to blow up. There's like a zip line in one area that you can go down to get away from the enemies. And then it all culminates in the factory, which although the factory has a lot of action, it is paced in a way that I thought was so meticulously and carefully done, where you are facing some of the tougher enemies in the game, but they're not constantly swarming you. The environment is very dank and it's very claustrophobic. It's very industrial and it's also beautiful, but it's paced in a way where you just kind of are always on edge because you like know something bad is going to happen, but something bad doesn't always happen. Like if the factory were in dead space, literally a zombie would be jumping out of every door and every window because that's how Dead Space handled horror awfully, in my opinion. But like the factory, you're like going down these dark hallways. You don't know if something's going to attack. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And it really keeps you on edge in a really good way. And then, of course, culminates in the absolutely ridiculous, like, tank mech fight.
Oh my god, we have to talk about that boss battle. I was beside myself. I was like, oh my god, when you see Chris preparing this like vehicle, it's like this tractor with chainsaws and mounted guns and tank treads. He's like, yeah, this is for you, Ethan. I'm like, what? Oh my god. And then the boss of that Heisenberg or whatever, he turns into like this giant mechanical monster, and you're just like blocking with a chainsaw, and you're like running around shooting like rockets and your cannon, and like everything's exploding. And I'm like, oh my god, this is like the biggest fucking over the top battle that's like ever been in Resident Evil. It is like so bananas. But yeah, man, I totally agree. Like you just get a little taste, right? You get a little bit of open world in the village. You get your scary classic RE with Lady Dimitrescu. You get PT creep slowly and piss your fucking pants because everything is super scary in the dollhouse. You get the action run and gun, like run around in the fish area. And then you go back to like a balance, like you said, like you get like some intense encounters, but there's also a good pacing that culminates like a giant boss fight. You get like every flavor of Resident Evil, which I think is just a really, really amazing trick for them to pull off, right? Like the way that they did it with the quadrants, the central hub, kind of spanning like every version of Resident Evil we've ever gotten in one package. Pretty neat trick. Pretty neat trick indeed.
Yeah, I was really impressed, and it was very unexpected because people had been drawing comparisons to 4 the whole time, like saying like, oh, well, this looks like it's going to be the spiritual successor to 4. And although, I mean, I love Resident Evil 4 for how silly it is and everything, Resident Evil 4 is a very, very linear experience. Like, you're in a few bigger areas, but it's all, you get to A to B, A to B, A to B, and then the game is over. But Village, the way that they did the central hub and the pacing in the dungeons, it just worked. Like, it's just like genius to me, and it makes me wonder why have they never done this before? It was such a smart thing to do, and it gives you a little bit of everything. It gives you some slower paced stuff, some faster paced stuff, some horror, some action. And if you've been, if you're a longtime fan of Resident Evil and you've played most of the entries up until this point, like, you're going to be on board for whatever the new area is going to give you. And I just thought it was just really impressive the way that they paced it.
Agreed. I think there's one more thing that I want to talk about real briefly, but before I do that, is there anything spoilery that you would like to discuss really quickly?
Are you going to talk about how silly it is that Ethan gets his hands cut off every 5 minutes?
No, I'm not going to. That is silly. The amount of hand torture porn is ridiculous. I also just really quickly want to call out the number of times that you fall from the top floor of Lady Dimitrescu's house to the basement. It is slapstick comedy. How many times you escape or you get thrown down or you fall or something happens where you go from the fucking top of the house to the absolute rock bottom of the basement. It is kind of a joke how many times it happens. I thought that was goofy. Also, the finger porn was not cool. Did not appreciate that very much. No, what I'm going to talk about is Ethan's daughter. Like, the way that they cap off the story is, Ethan destroys himself, blows up in the giant explosion at the end of the game, which I thought was interesting because I was really wondering whether they were going to put Ethan through it again. Like, what else could they do with him? It kind of felt like they kind of would be going back to the same drawing board if they did it a second time. One time pre-military training, one time post-military training, nothing else to do with Ethan. But they reveal that Ethan was, I guess, revived or, be infected with the mold in Resident Evil 7. I didn't play 7, but, I don't know if that's a retcon or whatever, but, he is able to survive all this damage, grow his fingers back, survive getting his heart ripped out because he is, I don't know, half human, half mold monster from his infection in 7. And, a big theme of the game is that his daughter is superpowered because she is the child of this half mold monster. And so she is progressing whatever abilities that Ethan has. And so Ethan dies at the end of the game. And then you see a cutscene of his daughter who, says she's very powerful and she's being treated as if she is powerful. She's under guard. And I mean, I'm like, whoa, like, are they going to pivot again? Are we going to go back to third person? Are we going to get Ethan's daughter as the star of the next Resident Evil game? I mean, that's kind of a bold choice. I was kind of really excited by that. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, to me, I feel like, if I could predict what they're going to do next, I mean, it definitely seems like the next entry in this sort of like 7 to 8 universe, I would guess would be another first person game to keep it in theme, but you would play as Mia, his daughter, who is now, I guess, this kind of like all powerful being in a way, from being born from Ethan. But I mean, it just raises a bunch of questions. Like, I mean, I didn't really feel like one way or the other about the ending of the game. When you're talking about the mold monster stuff, I definitely I'm going to be really interested for you to play 7 now, because that really, like, in a way, it kind of explains a lot of the problems I had with 7, but also doesn't entirely, which I think is a little bit of bullshit, because I wouldn't call it a retcon, but it's kind of like just this like kind of unnecessary twist at the end of the game where it's like, oh, we're just going to explain all this away. Because like my big problem with that whole thing is that if Ethan, they set him up to be in cutscenes, at least, to be this kind of like indestructible being. And, there's literally a segment in 8 where he gets his hand chopped off. And the same thing actually happens in 7, really early in the game in 7. His other hand, his left hand, gets cut off and he ends up like getting it reattached to his body. And I remember when I played 7 at the time, I was like, like all of the drama and all of the thread just like fell out of the bottom of the game, because I was like, okay, well, if he can like get his arm cut off and then just like reattach it to his body, then like why am I using healing potions for the rest of the game? Like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. And so 8 like kind of pulls the same shit, and then they try to explain it away at the end, which I wasn't like totally on board with it, because it still doesn't make sense in 8, where like you basically are playing as an indestructible being, but if he gets hit by a skeleton with a sword twice, he dies, which makes literally zero sense. I mean, I know what they're trying to do, but I'm not on board for that. But like for the whole not Mia, but Eva, what's his daughter's name? Eva?
No, Evelyn was the one from
Rose,
7, wasn't it? Rose is her name, yes.
Eva was Miranda's daughter's name in 8, who she was trying to resuscitate, I think. But Rose, yeah. So, like, I'm curious, because if they make... I mean, it seems very much like they're going to make another one, and she will perhaps be the lead character in it. You know, it could be a split thing where it's like half her, half Chris or something. But if she's supposed to be this, like, all-powerful being, I'm wondering, like... what the hell is the next game going to be? Is she just going to be like running around, like using like psychic powers to kill everything? Or are they going to come up with some story caveat to like make her like a mortal being? Because that's kind of what they did with Ethan. So I'm just really curious. I mean, I'm sure whatever they do, the gameplay is going to be great. I'm going to play it and love it or whatever. But from a story perspective, I'm just like, how are they going to explain this one? Like, is she going to be like the next Wesker who can like do anything and, you know, move super fast and, you know, do all the stuff? Or are they going to find a way to, I don't know, infect her with some fucking serum at the start of the game and she like doesn't have her powers or whatever, and she gets them back at the end? Like, I don't know, they're just like, with Capcom, the possibilities are endless. So I don't know.
It's going to be Metroidvania. Metroidvania is next. I'm calling it right now.
I mean, hey,
going on record.
If that's it, that's fine. But I'm just curious to see what they're going to do with her and her powers. And I mean, she's only in the game for like a little bit, so I'm not particularly interested in her as a character. I also don't really like Ethan as a character. I also don't like Mia as a character. Like, even in 7, like I mean, I know you haven't played 7, but Mia is like, she's just so annoying. She like, nothing she does makes sense. She's always like a bitch. Like, she's never... like, she's just like always like this object, this roadblock in the story. And a lot of her actions in 7, like, I don't know, they're just stupid and they don't make sense. And I'm not going to spoil it because you haven't played it, but I'm really interested to hear what you think about 7 when you finish it. But I just don't like Mia as a character, and I don't like Ethan as a character. And Mia is one of those characters where like, she's the kind of side character where as I'm playing through the game, I'm just like, oh, I can't wait for her to get killed off like this. That'll make the game so much better. Which luckily for me at 8, I mean, she quote unquote gets killed off like 10 minutes in. So I was like, oh, thank God, I don't have to listen to her bitch for the rest of the game. This game's already a much bigger improvement over 7. But yeah, I just don't like any of the main characters. Like, Chris is cool. I like Chris, but like, Ethan's dumb, Mia's dumb. Like, I mean, his daughter, whatever, she's in it for like 5 minutes, so maybe she'll be cool down the line. But yeah, I'm just curious to see what they're going to do with her in the next game, if she's the main character, or if she has powers, if she doesn't, what's going to happen. But I mean, they're probably going to put out like 1 or 2 remakes of old games before 9, so it'll probably be like, you know, 6 years before we get Resident Evil 9 anyway. So it'll be a while.
Good questions all. I am very curious. I will say that 8 has reignited my interest in the franchise. I wasn't sure if I was still a Resident Evil person after staying away from 7, but I think I'm back in. I'm definitely gonna... I've got 7 on my Xbox. I'm gonna start it probably this week, maybe. I'll let you know. Maybe we can reconvene at some point in the future to talk about 7, perhaps. But I think that we have done pretty good coverage of Resident Evil Village. Probably time for us to wrap up here. Any last thoughts before we close the show?
I do. I have one nerdy technical question for you. What system did you play this on?
I played Resident Evil 8 on PS5.
Okay, because I don't have a PS5 yet. I think at this point I'm just going to wait until they inevitably release the PS5 Slim to get it, because you cannot find a PS5 ever to save your life, and also I'm like too broke to afford one. But I played it on PC, which is weird because I usually save my big AAA games for consoles, and I usually only play games either that are like short and indie or games that I've already played before that I'm familiar with from consoles on PC. But I took the Dive, and I bought 8 on PC. And for the most part, I have a very like mid-tier gaming PC. For the most part, it ran pretty well. Obviously, I couldn't push it to its full graphical potential. My PC doesn't have a graphics card that can do ray tracing or anything. There were a few areas in the game that had really, really intense slowdown for me, which is specific to my setup and the graphics and the settings I was running it on. But I'm just curious, because I don't have a new Xbox or the PS5, how did this game look for you on PS5? Was it like mind-blowingly beautiful?
I mean, no. I mean, it looked fine. It looked fine. There was no slowdown whatsoever. I mean, the frame rate was rock solid. There were no technical hiccups. It was very polished all the way through. I mean, I had no complaints about it. But it wasn't like I was like, oh my God, this looks amazing. It just, but again, I'm not much of a graphics whore either, right? Like it takes something really, really, really special for me to go, wow, that looks amazing. Like it's not a common occurrence for me. So I think it looked great. I mean, it looked great. It looked like what it needed to look like other than the shitty enemy design. But in terms of environments and lighting and all that stuff, I mean, it looked really good. I mean, I wouldn't, maybe other people would disagree, but I wouldn't hold this up as like, oh my God, if you want to get your mind blown by next gen graphics, check out Village. Like I wouldn't hold this one up, but I mean, maybe other people have a better TV with like some HDR and shit. Maybe it looked great on their TV, but I just have a regular TV and it looked fine and it played well and I had no complaints, but it's not something that I was like blown away by.
Okay. I was just curious because I'm just bitter over here in the corner not having a PS5 yet. So I want to know if it's the end all be all of looking great. I'm glad to hear it performance wise. It ran really well because for me, it was kind of hit and miss here and there, but for the most part, it ran well on my PC, but I was just curious.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, I got my PS5 through Gamefly. The So Video Games podcast, not currently sponsored by Gamefly, would be happy to be sponsored by Gamefly. But yeah, I got it through them. So yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I liked it well enough, but I am going to play 7 on the Xbox X. That is my current main console. So I will let you know how it goes. I got the game, all the DLC, got everything queued up. So we're going to jump into that pretty soon. So. All right, Corey Motley, we've been talking for a very long time. I am getting starving. I need some food. I'm sure you need to go get some food and maybe get back to that Mass Effect. Commander Shepard is way in the galaxy. He's not going to save itself. But man, I want to say it was wonderful to have you back. I am so glad that you came back to the show, and we're going to have to do this again sooner rather than later.
Yes, please. As you know, I've been playing far fewer games nowadays than I used to. But I feel like every time I play something that's kind of new and hot, I always hit you up and I'm like, oh, it's the one time a year I'm playing the big AAA thing right now. So I will continue to do that as I play new stuff. And I'm always happy to come back and chat, even if it's just with you, if it's just with Carlos, or if it's with all 3 of us. I'm always happy to be back.
Well, you are most welcome, and we will definitely have you on the show again as soon as possible, I'm sure. But for now, I'm tired. You're probably tired. I'm sure people listening are tired, and I can smell a plate of food waiting for me. So let us wrap it up. This is the end of the show, folks. Thank you very much for listening. If you listen to the spoiler section, before we close everything down, just know, as always, we love to get your questions and comments. Hit us up, sovideogamespodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter @sovideogames, but you can reach us individually. Corey, where can people find you, if at all?
Oh, I'm rusty. I haven't done this in a while. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram if you would like. My tweets are either about video games or makeup or skincare or that's about it. Parkour photos of photography I do. My Instagram is mostly photography I do, action photography, stuff like that, studio photos. You can follow me on either of those platforms. Same username for both. It's just my first and last name. Corey Motley, CoreyMotley. And if you want to follow me, I'd be glad to have you.
It's weird when people use their real name as their handle on social media. I find that so strange. For people who want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, BradGallaway. All A's, no O's, as per usual. And folks, that is going to do it for episode, what did I say, 233? 233. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks for joining us here. And we're going to see you next Friday. But in the meantime, this is bye from Brad.
And bye from Corey.